Chapter 61, The Perfect Second in Command. Don't underestimate me. Izanami-kun, she's so pitiful. Hinata watched Karin leave, escorted by a shadow clone, and couldn't hide her sympathy. She had always thought she was timid in front of Izanami, but compared to Karin, she felt almost bold. The look in Karin's eyes was heartbreakingly defeated. Izanami stroked Hinata's hair and smiled. We can't save everyone. All we can do is protect the people who matter to us. Hinata nodded vigorously. She wasn't a saint, she was simply moved because Karin was from Izanami's clan. When Shino returned, Izanami asked, which scroll did they get? The Heaven Scroll, Shino answered. That's perfect. Then we have the Earth Scroll. Izanami produced his team's scroll and tossed it to Shino. I'll leave these two scrolls with you, Shino. Shino's eyes narrowed as he understood. All right, we've gathered the scrolls. Aren't we heading straight to the center tower? Izanami glanced in another direction. Not yet. There's one more problem I need to take care of. Hinata's expression shifted. She remembered what Izanami had quietly told her in the bathhouse and what she'd seen with her Byakugan. Izanami-kun, are you going after that sand ninja with the gourd? No. Someone stronger than him. Izanami shook his head. You two wait outside the center tower. I'll meet you after I deal with it. Hinata, trusting Izanami's power, nodded without argument. Shino followed her lead. Understood. Once Hinata and Shino were gone, Izanami moved at once toward the direction of Team 7. The second person whose fate he intended to alter was Uchiha Sasuke. With his current setup, only defeats of Kage-level opponents raised the drop rate of talent entries enough to matter. He had tried killing lower-ranked enemies and even sending shadow clones on suicide runs, but nothing produced drops. Shadows and simple kills didn't change the drop mechanics. The number of Kage-level fighters in this era was vanishingly small, so Izanami had narrowed his options to two paths: discover some hidden mechanic in the talent entry system that boosted drop rates, or farm extremely high-grade entries to decompose into points. Kage-level entries at best yielded purple-level drops worth only 4-digit points. Above purple were gold, red, and even unknown tiers. Decomposing gold or red entries could return 5 or 6-digit point values. In rare cases, a red entry could decompose into over 990,000 points, instantly upgrading it to an unknown level at a 1-1 conversion. Until he found a new mechanism, Hinata, Sasuke, and Naruto were his priorities. Sasuke mattered most. He had the greatest talent and the fastest progression. Raising Sasuke's strength would raise Izanami's drop rate, and keeping Sasuke in Konoha would make future farming easy. Sasuke's loyalty would also be invaluable. In the original timeline, he abandoned everything to work for Naruto. In the One Piece world, he could be a perfect second-in-command like Roronoa Zoro, a talent Izanami refused to hand to Orochimaru. With a flash in his eyes, Izanami increased his speed and streaked toward Team 7. Meanwhile, Team 7 faced a grass ninja in the forest. You've obtained the Heaven Scroll, so you must want the Earth Scroll in my hands, the man taunted. The grass ninja, actually Orochimaru using the dead demon consuming seal to disguise himself, grinned and casually shook the Earth Scroll. Then, to Team 7's horror, he tilted his head back and swallowed it whole. He swallowed it. He actually ate the scroll, Naruto blurted. What is this guy's body made of? A jutsu? A Kekkei Genkai? Sasuke asked, more analytical than surprised. Sakura, trembling, hugged behind them both. Then let the scroll-snatching duel begin. Orochimaru's smile was playful and cold. I'll go all out. An invisible wave of chakra rolled out from Orochimaru. Team 7 staggered as if a current had hit them. They went pale and struggled to breathe. Sasuke, the strongest among them, even vomited where he stood. Is it genjutsu? No, that's killing intent. Sasuke's eyes went wide with a familiar terror, the same fear that had frozen him against Itachi. Just the presence of it makes us see our own deaths. Who is this? How is someone like this even in the Chunin exams? The killing intent was on a different plane entirely, not just more intense than the sand ninja with the gourd, but a wholly other dimension of threat. Damn it, don't think you can scare me off. Naruto's voice cut through the dread. Sasuke turned, expecting to see him collapse. Instead, Naruto stood, gritted his teeth, and began forming hand seals. Seeing Naruto unbowed made Sasuke's fear evaporate. If even Naruto wasn't intimidated, what reason did he have to be afraid? Resolve hardened in Sasuke's eyes. His pupils flashed, and the Sharingan sprang into life, the familiar two-tomoe pattern burning red. "Don't underestimate me," Sasuke muttered. "I'm the man who's going to become Hokage." "Multiple shadow clone jutsu," Naruto shouted. Bang, bang, bang. The sounds popped like balloons as smoke puffs bloomed through the trees. When the mist cleared, 300 Narutos stood in the forest. "Sasuke, Sakura, get behind me." The shadow clones hustled Sasuke and Sakura toward the rear, passing them hand to hand so the real Naruto and several clones could form seals up front. "Watch me blow him away in one breath." Orochimaru, who had been toying with them, blinked and frowned as he took in the chakra. Such chakra. Could this brat be? Wind release, great breakthrough. 300 shouts rang out as the clones unleashed a synchronized wind technique. Chapter 62. Inflated Naruto. Step on the point, brother. The wind howled like a passing typhoon, sweeping across a wide swath of the death forest. The examinees near the 7th class barely had time to turn their heads before the gale hit. Some were lifted and flung against the towering trees. Others, walking on the ground, were shoved hard enough to tumble. The sound of snapping wood and collapsing branches mixed with the roar of the wind. In one area, the airflow twisted like an ocean whirlpool, pitching the great trees over until they broke and crashed to the forest floor, raising clouds of dust. Fortunately, the ancient trees were massive and tough, otherwise the damage would have been worse. Even so, the destruction rivaled Temari's air current wild dance from the 4th Great Ninja War. When the wind died down, the patch of forest around the 7th class was a wreck. Naruto's 300 shadow clones had vanished, blown away by the very wind release he'd unleashed. Is this the strength of the dead last? Sasuke and Sakura, who had been teleported back by one of Naruto's clones and were crouched behind a tree, stared at the ruined clearing, trembling. Sasuke hadn't expected Naruto to be this powerful. Sakura covered her mouth in disbelief. Their last impression of Naruto was being bullied by Kakashi and terrified by the demon brothers. They knew only that he had massive chakra and a learned multiple shadow clone jutsu. They never imagined he could wield nature to this degree. If Naruto was dead last, then what did that make the so-called top students? Suddenly, their self-confidence felt shaken. A burst of triumphant laughter carried over the clearing. Naruto stood atop a fallen trunk, hands on his hips, grinning with utter smugness. "See that? This is my real strength. Whether it's Izanami, Hinata, Stinky Sasuke, or that bushy-browed guy, they'll all be beaten by me." His boast was cut off when a voice whispered into his ear. "A very powerful combination technique. I was almost killed by you." Before Naruto could react, 2 thick snakes sprung up and coiled around him like ropes, leaving only his midriff exposed. A figure slid up from the ground, unscathed, smiling with cruel amusement. "Let me go!" Naruto struggled, his eyes flashing red with vertical pupils. Orochimaru peered at him and smiled. "So it's you, brat, as I thought." "What do you mean, as you thought? Let me go and fight me properly if you dare," Naruto snapped. Orochimaru's smile deepened. "If you hadn't used that flashy combination just now, I might have had some fun. But like this, quiet would be better." He tugged at Naruto's jacket, while the fingers of his other hand burned with blue chakra, the 5 characters of wind, fire, water, earth, and lightning forming in the flame. At that moment, a voice shouted, "Let go of Naruto." Sasuke materialized beside Orochimaru and kicked. Orochimaru's hand, claws like talons, drove a palm into Naruto's stomach and struck up to intercept Sasuke's kick. The blow sent Naruto flying. Sasuke was knocked back too. Sasuke retaliated with a foul of flame. Fire release, great dragon fire technique. A fire dragon burst from Sasuke's mouth and roared at Orochimaru. Orochimaru, already on his feet, watched the two-tomoe Sharingan in Sasuke's eyes hungrily. Memories of Itachi training flickered behind those pupils. He quickly formed seals. Earth release, earth-style wall. A thick wall shot up from the ground and swallowed the fire dragon. Sasuke, speed heightened by stimulating his cells with lightning chakra, didn't try to flank. He pulled a kunai and sliced at the snakes binding Naruto, then yanked him free and bolted for the forest. "Sasuke, where are you taking me?" Naruto's voice was muffled with indignation. "Put me down. I'll make that snake man pay." "You idiot, can't you see?" Sasuke cursed under his breath. "Your wind release barely scratched him. He's a different level." Naruto's bravado faded. He had only the one combination technique. Orochimaru had simply used Earth Release to disappear underground and avoid it completely. Before they could get far, Orochimaru's voice reached them. They turned and saw him sliding like a human snake, his body bending and striking toward them with terrifying speed. The sight of that grinning face left both boys hollowed with fear. Naruto launched into hand signs, ready to create hundreds of clones at once. Multiple shadow clone jutsu, but his chakra was scrambled. Something in Orochimaru's technique had interfered. Only 20-odd clones formed. They tried to set up hand signs for another wind release, but their efforts barely produced the tiniest puffs of air, like an amateur's first great fireball attempt. It's the sealing jutsu he used earlier, Sasuke realized with cold sweat. This man was no genin. With no escape, Sasuke shoved Naruto to the side and charged Orochimaru. Dead last! Buy me time! Go get help! No, I won't abandon my teammates. Naruto scrambled to his feet and started to move in to help. Screw that. This isn't stubbornness time, Sasuke shouted as he hurled shuriken at Orochimaru. This guy isn't a genin. The earlier commotion will draw the examiners. If you go get help now, we all might survive. Otherwise you, me, and Sakura are dead. Naruto's eyes hardened. He couldn't leave them. He formed seals again. Shadow clone technique. Several clones popped into existence and dispersed, flying outward toward the forest's edge. The main Naruto barreled straight at Orochimaru, but Naruto's loyalty did him no favors. Sasuke's speed, amplified by his lightning chakra and his Sharingan's insight, was enough that, on his own, he might have been able to outrun Orochimaru for a while. With Naruto tagging along, Sasuke's movements were constrained. He had to worry about his companion. Orochimaru noticed and shifted his attention, exploiting the distraction. In a few rapid moves, Orochimaru trapped Sasuke and Naruto. The ground around them turned into a sucking swamp and large snakes coiled up like zongzi, binding their feet and limbs. As Orochimaru readied seals and extended his neck, he lunged to mark Sasuke with the heavenly curse mark. Bang! A figure dropped from nowhere and slammed a fist into Orochimaru's face. The impact was so crushing, Orochimaru's head flew back like a ball, his body following. The newcomer was none other than the punctual latecomer, Izanami, who had arrived just in time to intercept. Chapter 63, Meatball Series, Gaia Energy Cannon. Gaia Energy Cannon, Izanami. When Izanami appeared out of nowhere, both Uchiha Sasuke and Uzumaki Naruto couldn't hide their relief, as if they'd been saved. Sasuke in particular felt an inexplicable calm settle over him. I didn't expect the two of you to be this unlucky, to be singled out by him, Izanami said. He hauled Naruto and Sasuke out of the swamp one by one and flung them back onto solid ground. Sasuke caught on immediately. Izanami, do you know who that is? I didn't at first. I only sensed chakra, something no genin should possess, Izanami replied. He looked toward Orochimaru, whose head had returned to normal and who was slowly pushing himself up. But now it's obvious. One of the legendary Sannin, one of Konoha's S-rank rogue ninja, Orochimaru. So it's really him. Sasuke's pupils tightened. Why would a figure like him show up here? I don't know, but he's clearly after you two. There's probably something on you he wants. For the Sharingan, right? Sasuke said, face hardening. Izanami, what should we do now? Run from someone like him isn't simple, Izanami said. The best we can do is stall until reinforcements arrive. Do you still have the will to fight? Izanami asked Sasuke with a small smile. Of course, Sasuke answered, lips curling. Naruto chimed in, chest puffed up. Me too. This guy can keep fighting. Izanami grinned. Then let's show him what this generation can do. Orochimaru watched them with interest. I didn't expect someone like him among this generation. Aside from the last Uchiha and that brat, Konoha still produces geniuses. His expression soured, but I have no time for games. He launched forward in an Orochimaru-style body flicker, aiming to get to Sasuke before anyone could intervene and plant the curse mark of heaven. He focused on Sasuke, never suspecting there was another formidable fighter among the exam participants. He burst forward and found Izanami already gone. One moment, Izanami was gone. The next, he had appeared right in front of Orochimaru, a kunai crackling faintly with electricity in his hand, aimed straight for the snake man's head. Orochimaru's pupils narrowed. The movement was familiar, yet faster than Sasuke's. He spat a blade from his mouth to parry the kunai and thrust to pierce Izanami's neck. The kunai snapped under Orochimaru's blade. Izanami vanished in an instant, and Sasuke leaped into the air, suddenly in the spot where Izanami had been. Flames spat from Sasuke's mouth and coalesced into a gargantuan fire dragon. Fire release, Great Dragon Fire Technique. Under Izanami's tutelage, and with chakra reserves well beyond the original timeline, Sasuke favored and excelled at the Great Dragon Fire Technique more than the ordinary Great Fireball. The dragon raced forward. Orochimaru didn't dodge. He let the dragon engulf him, and within the inferno, his body became liquid. This is Earth Release Substitution Jutsu. Sasuke's expression shifted in midair. When he landed, his Sharingan spun wildly, eyes combing the ground for Orochimaru. A tearing sound cut the air. A massive python lunged out from behind a fallen tree, jaws wide, trying to swallow Sasuke whole. Sasuke smirked and used body flicker to vanish, reappearing beneath the snake and kicking its head, forcing its mouth shut. Then the python's belly split open. A figure burst forth, palm outstretched, which erupted into dozens of writhing snakes. Hidden shadow snake hands, the attack hissed. Sasuke, still mid-movement from his body flicker, was taken by surprise. The swarm of snakes coiled to bind him, but a sharp voice rang out, steady as ever. Wind release, wind cutter technique. Izanami and a translucent white wind blade appeared and sliced through the serpents, cleaving the python in two as well. Orochimaru scowled. "It's you again, brat." Izanami had blocked his path to planting the curse mark, and Orochimaru's patience snapped. As he moved to strike, his expression changed. Izanami retracted his hand into his sleeve, then suddenly spat a stream of fire, blasting Orochimaru as he emerged from the python's wreckage, unable to perform a substitution jutsu or use earth release in time. Orochimaru screamed as the flames swallowed him. Izanami seized the moment and leapt several meters into the air. "Sasuke, fall back!" He called out the warning, raised both hands, and a blue energy sphere bloomed between his palms, swelling like a balloon. Sasuke used body flicker and vanished. When he reappeared, he was beside Naruto, who had been watching the fight in stunned silence. Sasuke barely had time to think of pulling Naruto behind cover when Izanami's voice cut through. "Gaia Energy Cannon!" Izanami held the spinning energy sphere, its outer shell blue, its core white, until the core abruptly flushed orange-red. The whole sphere turned into a massive, blazing fireball. It wasn't much larger than a great fireball in size, but the energy packed into it was incomparably greater. He hurled it down. The explosion that followed rocked half the Forest of Death. Special Jonin, and Anbu teams who had already intervened in the exam saw a towering fire tornado roaring above the trees ahead, its flames taller than the forest canopy. "What terrifying fire release! Is that a composite ninjutsu enhanced by wind release?" one Jonin breathed, while another, who'd mastered at least 2 nature transformations, stared in shock. First a large-scale wind release, then a fire release like that. Could it be someone is fighting Orochimaru? If so, everyone present realized, then this Chunin exam had just turned into something far more dangerous than anyone expected. Chapter 64. The second exam is over. Did Izanami really develop this ninjutsu on his own? Uchiha Sasuke and Uzumaki Naruto crouched behind a fallen giant tree, staring in horror at the spinning fire tornado that tore through the forest like a colossal top. Naruto swallowed hard, trembling. So powerful. He had thought his multiple shadow clone jutsu combined with wind release, great breakthrough, was incredible. He hadn't expected Izanami to have developed a ninjutsu with such an enormous area of effect, one that didn't require a shadow clone or even hand seals. It was on a completely different level. Naruto's inflated ego deflated in an instant. "Let's go!" Izanami appeared behind them in a blur, grabbing both Sasuke and Naruto and pulling them away. Not long after the three vanished, a figure crawled out from a nearby scorched patch of ground, Orochimaru, covered in burns. He gagged, his face contorting. A slick, mucus-covered slip of a body wriggled free from his mouth as he spat out a new vessel. "That wretched brat ruined my plans," he croaked, then a thin, delighted grin spread across his face. "But that chakra, the speed of the jutsu, astonishing talent." He watched the fire tornado beginning to rip through the forest, a blaze that would consume everything if not stopped. "What a familiar technique," Orochimaru murmured. I never expected the jutsu Minato and that fool couldn't perfect would be achieved by someone in the next generation. It seems Konoha, the windmill that has stood still for so many years, is finally starting to turn again. Glancing toward the direction Izanami and the others had gone, he then looked off in another direction, a cruel smile forming. What's mine will ultimately be mine. Sasuke-kun, your body will be mine. With that, Orochimaru sank back into the earth and disappeared from the forest of death. Soon after, a swarm of figures converged on the scorched area. Anbu operatives in cloaks and cat-faced masks, special jonin and jonin in flak jackets. Are we too late? Anko Mitarashi demanded, her face pale with uncertainty. Quick, put out the flames! The other shinobi formed a coordinated water release and doused the fire tornado before it could spread further. After Izanami pulled Sasuke and Naruto away, they picked up Sakura Haruno, who had been hiding, and flew 2 or 3 miles before stopping. Team 7 leaned against trees, breathing heavily. Orochimaru didn't follow us, did he? Sasuke asked Izanami, still wary. Don't worry, he didn't follow. The rescue teams arrived, Izanami assured them. At that, Team 7 relaxed visibly. Sakura sank to the ground, trembling. Why would a legendary shinobi target us? This is terrible luck. Ch-ch. If that guy didn't have Earth Release, I would have beaten him, Naruto grumbled stubbornly. Only Sasuke remained solemn. He knew how likely it was that Orochimaru had been after him. The thought of being targeted by someone so dangerous made him shiver. This time they'd escaped thanks to Izanami. What about next time? Izanami rested a reassuring hand on Sasuke's shoulder and smiled. Don't be nervous. If anyone should be worried, it's the village. An S-rank rogue ninja is the most dangerous person in the shinobi world. Even the great shinobi villages won't take him lightly. With someone like Orochimaru appearing in Konoha, the Hokage will mobilize the village to find him. The village will raise its security to the highest level. After the Chunin exams end, don't go home yet. Stay in Central Street until the village deals with Orochimaru. Sasuke felt a real sense of relief and nodded. Understood. Once they'd recovered, Izanami and Team 7 headed for the center tower. As they walked, Naruto leaned close to Izanami, curiosity bright in his eyes. Izanami, was that fire tornado a jutsu your Jonin instructor taught you? No, Izanami replied, shaking his head. I developed it myself. What? He developed it himself? Naruto and Sakura exclaimed in unison. Sasuke's expression shifted, as if recalling something. Is that the ninjutsu you perfected? Isn't it lightning release? Not at all, Izanami said with a knowing smile. The Gaia energy cannon is only a half-finished technique I happened to develop while working on my ultimate jutsu. What? Team 7 burst out. That fire tornado wasn't even the full form. Sakura clicked her tongue in disbelief. Naruto and Sasuke both swallowed hard, realizing once more the vast gap between them and Izanami. If a half-finished technique had that much power, how devastating would Izanami's finished ultimate be? Sasuke's gaze burned with a new intensity. An ultimate, an S-rank ninjutsu, could be the key to defeating Orochimaru. Even if Izanami refused to teach the ultimate, the Gaia energy cannon alone would be invaluable. Sasuke, who also had affinity for fire, decided after the exams he would find a way to gain Izanami's favor. After using his reincarnation eye to lock onto Orochimaru's position, and confirming the rogue had given up trying to place the cursed seal on him in the Forest of Death, Izanami separated from Team 7 and met with Hinata and Shino Aburame before entering the center tower. Without the cursed seal, Sasuke's opponents in the forest had been only Yakushi Kabuto, who'd been concealing his strength, and the likes of Gaara, Rock Lee, and Neji Hyuga. As for the other examinees, none had been a real match for Sasuke. At the current pace, Team 7 would reach the center tower quickly, and they did. Fearing Orochimaru would strike again, Team 7 barely rested for a quarter of an hour before finding another team that had a heaven scroll. They snatched the scroll and rushed to the center tower, where an Iruka Umino shadow clone popped out of it, to whom they reported Orochimaru's attack. With Konoha now publicly confirming Orochimaru's return, undercurrents rippled through the village, and the atmosphere grew tense. Many shinobi demanded Hiruzen Sarutobi cancel the Chunin exams and concentrate entirely on apprehending Orochimaru. But with so many ninjas from other villages still in Konoha, and invitations already sent to dignitaries like the 4th Kazekage, the exams could not be stopped. Hiruzen could only dispatch search parties of Shinobi and Anbu to pursue Orochimaru covertly. 5 days later, the second Chunin exams officially concluded. Chapter 65, Uchiha Sasuke's Rival. July 7th, Konoha Year 60, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The examinees who had arrived at the central tower early and been assigned dorms to wait out the end of the second exam had been notified by the proctors and were gathered in the first floor hall. Team 8 was among them. 24 examinees stood in the hall with their jonin instructors. As Anko Mitarashi had warned, the second exam had cut the number of candidates who passed the first exam by at least half. Out of 24 teams and 72 examinees, only 8 teams, 24 people, had made it through the second test. Konoha accounted for the vast majority, apart from Gaara and his 2 siblings and Tasan's trio from the Hidden Sound village. Everyone else was from Konoha. The survivors were Team 6, Team 7, Team 8, Team 10, Might Guy's Team 3, and Yakushi Kabuto with his 2 teammates. Kurenai Yuhi arrived and praised Izanami and his 2 teammates for performing well on the first day. Her gentle, feminine manner was on full display. Team 8, being a sensing team, had been a bit late to the central tower, so they had no pride about it. Izanami and Hinata only smiled. At that moment, Izanami sensed something and looked toward Team 7, just as his gaze met Kakashi Haraki's. He smiled and nodded at Kakashi. He knew why Kakashi was looking. Kakashi had been investigating Orochimaru and had already been told by Team 7, who had been responsible for the fire tornado. Before the examinees could talk with their jonin for long, Hiruzen Sarutobi and the proctor team for the third exam appeared on the second floor. All the jonin instructors moved up to the viewing platform to listen to the third Hokage's speech. After Hiruzen explained that the Chunin exams were a microcosm of the Allied nations' wars, and that the third exam would be attended by many dignitaries and spectators, and therefore needed another culling to ensure entertaining matches, Gekko Hayate stepped forward as chief proctor. Cough, cough. I am Gekko Hayate, chief proctor for the third Chunin selection exam. He coughed, scanned the 24 examinees, checked his clipboard, and continued slowly. This is just the preliminary round. The rules are simple. Losers are eliminated, and winners advance to the main competition. Shortly, the wall screen will display your names. They will then be shuffled and randomly matched. Before the exam begins, does anyone wish to withdraw? If not, I will upload the list. I withdraw. Kabuto Yakushi raised his hand to withdraw as soon as Gekko Hayate finished speaking. The action drew a little attention from Hiruzen and some proctors on the viewing platform, but it didn't overly worry the other examinees. Unlike in other stories, the rookies here didn't know Kabuto. Cough, cough. What's your name? Gekko Hayate asked. Yakushi Kabuto. All right, you may leave. Gekko Hayate crossed Kabuto's name off the list and asked, There are now 23 examinees remaining. There will be one bye. Does anyone else wish to withdraw? No one answered. Gekko Hayate picked up a walkie-talkie. Then I announced the preliminary round of the third Chunin selection exam officially begins. The screen flickered, and then, like a keyboard typing, names appeared one by one. When all 23 names were shown, the image shifted and 2 large letters, VS, filled the center of the screen. Names flashed on both sides of the VS, and then the screen froze. Tosan Kinuta, VS Akimichi Choji. Examinees whose names are displayed, stay. Everyone else, go to the second floor viewing platform to watch the match, Gekko Hayate ordered. Choji, you can do it, Asuma Sarutobi murmured. Don't lose to a ninja from a small village. If you win, Asuma-sensei will buy you barbecue. At the word barbecue, Akimichi Choji's eyes flew open, and he nodded earnestly. Kurenai stood beside the railing, and Izanami leaned on it as well, but he wasn't watching Tosan Kinuta and Choji beginning their fight. Instead, he was watching the Hidden Sound village jonin standing near Zaku Abumi and Kintsuchi. Others couldn't place the identity of that Otogakure figure, but Izanami recognized him instantly, Orochimaru. Izanami hadn't expected Orochimaru to sneak into the central tower after failing to plant the curse mark, just to watch the preliminaries. If Orochimaru was here, why hadn't he arranged for Uchiha Sasuke to fight Yoroi Akado first? Was he simply watching, or did he have other plans? As if sensing Izanami's stare, Orochimaru's gaze slid over, and he gave a charming, sinister smile. Izanami returned a polite smile and a nod, pretending not to know the identity of the man. Below, the match had already been decided. Though Tosan hadn't displayed the same overt cunning as in other accounts, Choji still charged with a human bullet tank. He pulled his head into his body and filled his ears, which kept him from being knocked out immediately. But his experience was no match for Tosan, who had fought his way up in rougher conditions. Tosan dodged Choji's impacts, then feigned an opening, luring Choji's body to slam into the wall and get stuck. Using a sudden soundwave attack, Tosan ended the match in one blow. Akimichi Choji has lost his ability to fight. The winner of the first round is Tosan Kinuta, Gekko Hayate announced. Nara Shikamaru and Yamanaka Ino both put a hand to their foreheads in dismay. Asuma, a cigarette dangling from his mouth, chuckled. At least he's not hurt. Choji's strong. He just ran into a type that counters him. Asuma stepped down to the lower level and helped Choji back up to the viewing platform, rather than sending him to the medical tent. The screen flickered again, and the next match was frozen into place. Uchiha Sasuke vs Zaku Abumi. Orochimaru smiled at Zaku. "I look forward to your performance, Zaku." "Yes!" Zaku saluted excitedly. "Lord, I will not disappoint you." On Team 7's platform, Sakura Haruno warned Sasuke. "Sasuke-kun, that ninja from the Sound Village seems to use sound-based ninjutsu. Be careful." Uzumaki Naruto put his hands behind his head and shouted a taunt. "Cocky Sasuke, don't lose before you fight me, got it?" Sasuke, about to head down, stopped, turned to Naruto, and unexpectedly smiled. "Naruto, I also really want to fight you." Naruto's teasing grin froze, his squinted eyes widened slowly, and he stared in disbelief. A strange, thrilling feeling surged through him. Excitement prickled his skin, and his whole body hummed. Chapter 66, The Radiance of the Eldest Lady. "Uchiha Sasuke, I will definitely defeat you and prove my worth." As Uchiha Sasuke descended into the arena, a voice from across called out. He looked up at Zaku Abumi, an arrogant shinobi from a minor village, and snorted. "Save your daydreaming for when you're asleep." We'll see." Remembering the information Orochimaru had given him, Zaku Abumi smiled with confidence. "Ready? Then let's begin." Gekko Hayate took a few steps back and declared the start of the second round. Without hesitation, Sasuke pulled 3 shuriken from his pouch and tossed them toward Zaku, testing him first. Slicing sound wave. Instead of dodging or countering, Zaku opened his right palm to reveal the hollowed-out implant there. Forming a hand seal, he channeled chakra into the device, converting it into compressed air that blasted out through the wind ports. The pressure behaved like a wind release, ricocheting the incoming shuriken straight back at Sasuke with full force. Sasuke's expression changed. The disdain vanished, his pupils flashed scarlet as the Sharingan with 2 Tomei activated, and his figure blurred and disappeared. "So fast!" Many in the stands gasped, while several jonin exchanged sharper glances. Something was off. Zaku, however, was delighted. "This is exactly what I wanted!" He crouched and slammed his palms into the floor. Slicing sound superwave. All of Zaku's chakra wove into sound and air pressure, roaring out of the vents as invisible waves that distorted the air and instantly filled the entire hall. The force was so intense that even Gekko Hayate, a special jonin, staggered and used Shunshin to leap to the second-floor stands, bracing himself to intervene. Sasuke reappeared not far behind Zaku, clutching his ears with a pained look. Sensing him, Zaku spun and aimed the still-surging air pressure at Sasuke. The blast sent him skidding across the floor. Much of the force was driven into the ground. If it had hit Sasuke full-on, he'd have been in serious trouble. But the internal shock still slammed through him, the sound waves attacking through the water in his body, like what Tosan Kinuta had done to Akimichi Choji. Grimacing, Sasuke planted chakra into his feet and stuck himself to the wall to resist the remaining pressure. Once the wave subsided, he formed hand seals. Shadow clone technique. 2 pops produced 2 shadow clones at his sides, and then the 3 Sasukes vanished. Zaku froze, panic flashing across his face. He began to repeat his earlier tactic, preparing to slam the ground and trap Sasuke in another soundwave field. But he had already lost the information advantage. His failure to finish Sasuke immediately cost him the initiative. Slicing sound superwave. He slammed his hands into the earth again, pouring everything into another blast. The hall filled once more with the distorting waves. Sasuke's high-speed shadow clones, now visible only because of their movements, covered their ears and dissolved with 2 pops into white smoke. When the smoke cleared, there were only 2 Sasukes left. Zaku's expression went white. Then a shout came from above. Fire release, great fireball technique. A scorching wind fell through the ceiling as a massive fireball descended. Zaku looked up, only to be swallowed by the inferno. No one moved to save him. Not Orochimaru, who had been egging him on, and not anyone else. Gekko Hayate had been ready to intervene to protect Sasuke. He would not risk saving a shinobi from another village. The fireball smashed into the floor and exploded, turning the spot into a shallow crater while Zaku screamed in the flames. Just as the blazes threatened to consume him, a jet of water doused the fire. Medical team, over here. Gekko Hayate, using water release, had extinguished the flames and then took out his transceiver. 2 medical nin in white arrived with a stretcher and carried Zaku away. Orochimaru, Tosan Kinuta, and Kintsuchi watched impassively, showing no concern for their fallen comrade. The cold indifference sent a chill through the crowd. The jonin in the stands understood. The Sound Village was brutal and competitive. If you were weak, you were expendable. The match lists flickered on the screen again. The 3rd round pairing was set. Hyuga Hinata versus Kintsuchi. Hinata, good luck, Kurenai Yuhi called from the stands. If you win, I'll take you out to a big meal. Izanami said nothing. She rolled up her sleeve, produced a wristband-sized storage scroll, formed a seal, and pulled out a camera. She grinned and held it up. Hinata, look nice. I'm taking a picture for Hanabi. Okay. Hinata smiled and nodded, then walked slowly toward the stairs. The younger rookies cheered her on as she climbed. Sasuke, moving up as well, called out a warning. Watch their weapons and devices. They use those to make sound waves. Okay. Hinata's smile stayed steady, full of quiet confidence. Kintsuchi had already leapt down from the stands and was standing to Gekko Hayate's left, waiting. Looking at Hinata, she felt an instinctive inferiority, though for her it was not envy that softened her tone, but burning jealousy. Both girls had long, straight black hair, but Hinata's seemed to shine more brightly. She wore an exquisitely woven kimono, something Kintsuchi could never afford, and her posture and bearing had the effortless air of a lady born to wealth. Appearance, demeanor, background. On every level, Kintsuchi felt crushed and inferior, as if they were from completely different worlds. Rage boiled up in her. Why was she an orphan fighting tooth and nail for a spot in the Chunin exams, while Hinata stood here so easily, born with a bloodline limit and privilege? I'll make her feel as low as I do. I'll cut her hair, scratch her face, humiliate her. A cruel smile crept onto Kintsuchi's lips, hidden from everyone but visible to Hinata. Seeing that smile, Hinata's gentle expression tightened, her gaze sharpening until the veins at her temples stood out. Chapter 67, My Wife is Handsome. The 3rd round begin. As Gekko Hayate's voice fell, Kintsuchi was just about to pull a senbon tied with bells from her pouch, ready to throw it at Hinata and unleash a soundwave genjutsu. But Hinata, 2 meters away, vanished and reappeared in front of her, a blur of motion like the body flicker technique, leaving only an afterimage. Her speed was so sudden and precise that Kin couldn't react. Clap, clap, clap. With her fingers wrapped in a blue chakra aura, Hinata began to jab at Kintsuchi's torso with merciless precision. Her finger strength sank through fabric as if into flesh. Chakra penetrated the clothing and skin, striking acupoints, blocking the flow of chakra in the meridians and delivering searing pain. Before Kin could even cry out, Hinata's hands had jabbed a dozen times like a gale. Finally, Hinata slapped Kin with an open palm. With a bang, a distorted rush of air burst from Kin's back. When the shockwave faded, Kin's eyes were vacant. Blood dribbled from the corner of her mouth. She buckled at the knees, and then collapsed face first onto the ground. Thank you for the guidance, Hinata said softly, her tone gentle but her gaze condescending as she looked down. The bulging veins at her temples slowly subsided. Click, click, click. On the 2nd floor stands, camera shutters kept clicking. Izanami, transformed into an enthusiastic little photographer, had a smile playing at his mouth. If he weren't still so young and their relationship not yet public, he very nearly wanted to shout, My wife is so cool." What just happened?" one of the rookies whispered. "How did Hinata use the body flicker like that? So fast and so fluid. That movement, it looks so familiar. Where have I seen it before?" The rookies were stunned. Ino Yamanaka and Sakura Haruno felt the same helpless awe that Kintsuchi did, completely outclassed by Hinata. In Might Guy's class, Hyuga Neji clutched his fists, his eyes full of unwillingness. The young mistress had grown even stronger. He replayed their sparring matches over the years in his mind, from early parody to gradually being suppressed to being utterly crushed. That finger strength and chakra could make an opponent bleed from internal injuries or collapse without even completing a full 32-palm set. Even though Neji had mastered rotation, he couldn't be sure he could beat Hinata now. Tenten turned to Rock Lee, watching the trembling of his eyes, and asked, "Little Lee, did Neji's clanmate just use a high-speed movement?" "It was high-speed movement, but different from mine," Rock Lee said, nodding and then shaking his head. Might Guy laughed and explained, "It's a nature transformation trick. Neji's clanmate has mastered lightning release nature transformation. She uses lightning chakra to stimulate her cells and increase her speed, much like Uchiha Sasuke did before. How youthful." Rock Lee finally understood. Sasuke's explosive speed wasn't just the Sharingan, it was lightning release stimulating his cells. Hinata had learned the same, using lightning nature chakra to supercharge her body flicker into a taijutsu-style high-speed movement. Izanami, not as rigid as the Hyuga leadership, had taught Hinata this method, and it showed. Her body flicker had no stiffness, and her attacks came like a gale, as if she had just had her weights removed. "This main family's heir is truly outstanding," Hiruzen Sarutobi murmured, puffing his pipe and smiling. His eyes flicked to Izanami, who was checking his film, and his smile took on a teasing warmth. To cultivate the young mistress of the main family like this is impressive. But with such a remarkable successor, how will you ever be able to keep up with her? In 7th class, Kakashi Hatake asked Uchiha Sasuke, "Sasuke, did you teach Hinata?" "No. Izanami taught both me and Hinata," Sasuke replied. Uzumaki Naruto, half jealous, half jesting, piped up, "You really are Izanami's little brother." Sasuke didn't flare at Naruto's barb this time. He was oddly moved. If he could be Izanami's little brother and learn those ultimate techniques, perhaps it wouldn't be so bad. His prideful thoughts went unnoticed. Kakashi glanced toward Izanami and silently raised his estimation of the young man. To hold sway over this new generation of civilian geniuses was no small feat. Vast chakra reserves, lightning release cell stimulation, a powerful fire tornado, and other unknown ultimate techniques. Kakashi felt a flash of recognition, as if seeing a reflection of his younger self when he developed Chidori. Intrigued, he looked forward to the next match even more. Orochimaru, sharing similar curiosity, also stayed to watch the remaining bouts instead of leaving when the Dosu 3 battle had finished. The 4th round began quickly. Misumi Tsurugi versus Kankuro. Misumi, one of Yakushi Kabuto's teammates, posed as a Konoha Jinin but was actually a spy Orochimaru had placed inside the village. He was peculiar, almost as if he wanted everyone to know his ties to Orochimaru, because he openly used Orochimaru's soft physique modification, letting parts of his body freely extend and retract. If he could fuse that with the Akimichi clan's expansion technique, Izanami mused, it would be the ultimate divine art, stronger than the 8 gates. In the match, Misumi quickly coiled around Kankuro like a python, but the catch was that his target wasn't Kankuro himself, but the puppet crow. By the time Misumi realized it, it was already too late. Kankuro emerged from behind the bandaging of the puppet, took control, and swiftly dispatched Misumi, claiming an easy victory. Just as Zaku Abumi had ambushed Sasuke earlier, this bout showed that until a shinobi reaches Kage level, ninja battles are as much about information as about power. Without the right information, what's decisive isn't only technique strength, but tactics and intelligence. Misumi had been outplayed in that regard. The first 4 rounds had ended in near-instant kills. In less than 10 minutes, the preliminaries were already into the 5th round. That match, however, finally dragged on long enough to make half the crowd yawn, because the combatants were Ino Yamanaka versus Sakura Haruno. Just as Uzumaki Naruto had learned Wind Release, Great Breakthrough, Sakura had also improved beyond her original self. Kakashi Hatake had taught her a genjutsu, the C-rank demonic illusion, hell viewing technique that forces the target to see the thing they fear most. During the survival exercise, Kakashi's genjutsu had routed Sakura in an instant. If her opponent had been Minako, Sakura might have won. Her opponent, however, was Ino Yamanaka, a specialist in yin release. Ino easily broke the hell viewing technique. Ino, heir to a secret branch of ninjutsu, had also already mastered the Yamanaka clan's mind transfer jutsu, but the clan's role is support, and mind transfer has no offensive power. Even when she ambushed Sakura and took over her body, Sakura's second personality drove her out from within. One genjutsu countered, one family secret nullified. These former best friends, natural rivals, ended up relying on their academy basics to decide the outcome. Three-body technique, shuriken throws, close-quarters kunai work, taijutsu duels. Both girls had impeccable fundamentals. They were model students. To most of the jonin, it was like watching children play at being ninjas, boring. Izanami and others found them too weak. Only Minako felt a kinship. These honor students reminded her of herself. In the end, just like in the original timeline, both girls collapsed from exhaustion and missed out on the main competition. By the time they woke, the battles had already reached the 9th round. The 6th round was Tenten versus Temari, a one-sided defeat. Tenten's attributes were countered by Temari's wind release. She had no answer. The 7th round paired Nara Shikamaru with Sawano Genichi. Sawano was one of Kiba Inuzuka's teammates, the son of an ordinary chunin. He was competent. He'd learned a C-rank water release, Wild Water Wave. With enough chakra, that technique could approach the effectiveness of a B-rank water release, Water Wall. But his combat experience was limited, and his intellect didn't match Shikamaru. When Sawano spat out water and made Shikamaru vanish from sight, the result was already written. Shikamaru had a kunai clenched in his mouth, used shadow imitation jutsu to restrain Sawano, and as he removed the kunai, the other conceded. The 8th round was Minako versus Hyuga Neji. Faced with a prominent Konoha clan member and the previous class's top student, Minako didn't even bother to step into the arena. She simply raised her hand and forfeited. Round 9 was Uzumaki Naruto versus Kiba Inuzuka. This is great. It's that idiot Kiba. I'm definitely going to win, Naruto crowed, planting a foot on the railing when he saw the pairings. Kiba's smile matched Naruto's arrogance. He stamped a few times and shouted, "Idiot Naruto, I should be saying that." When Kiba reached the arena, he swaggered up to Naruto and taunted, "Dead last, say something nice to me now, and I'll let you lose with some dignity. Or you can just concede." To Kiba, Naruto was the same dimwit he'd been months ago. With him and Akamaru combined, Kiba was sure victory was guaranteed. Naruto only puffed up and replied, "Watch me beat you in one move." "Haha, beat me in one move? Dead last, you haven't woken up yet." Kiba laughed, then looked to Akamaru. "Akamaru, let's teach this dead last a lesson." "Woof," Akamaru barked. "Round 9, start." Gecko Hayate called. Naruto formed the ram hand seal and shouted, "Shadow clone technique." A few days of training under the 5 elements seal had calmed Naruto's chakra. He couldn't make hundreds of clones, but producing dozens was still easy. Bang, bang, bang. The crisp sounds of chakra formation and white smoke burst outward. When the smoke cleared, more than 20 Narutos surrounded Kiba and Akamaru. "What is this? Shadow clone technique. Why so many?" Kiba was stunned. Jinin and even some jonin in the second-floor stands were equally shocked. The experienced jonin immediately recognized that this wasn't the ordinary shadow clone technique, but the forbidden multiple shadow clone jutsu. Wind release. A murmur ran through the crowd before Kiba could recover. Naruto and his clones already began forming hand seals. The jonin's faces tightened. What was about to happen was predictable. By the time Kiba reacted, Naruto and his clones shouted the technique name in unison. Great breakthrough. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Howling wind swelled, and the created airflow, like an invisible giant hand, grabbed Kiba and Akamaru and hurled them into the air. Hands of wind tossed man and beast back and forth like they'd been caught in a tornado. Even the spectators on the second floor felt the gust. Examinees gripped railings, some hid their faces, while many jonin shielded their eyes. When the jonin instructor of Team 6 saw Kiba and Akamaru spinning toward the arena wall, he body shunshined over, caught them mid-flight, and ended the match. Round 9. The winner is Uzumaki Naruto. Gecko Hayate announced the result, bracing himself against the gust and still shielding his eyes. Naruto put his hands on his hips and laughed loudly. Ha ha ha! Idiot Kiba, you saw how awesome I am, right? He was elated. His rival bested in a single move. His chest swelled with pride. In that moment, he fantasized about kicking Sasuke and having others kneel before him. His grin grew lewd. Drool even dribbled from the corner of his mouth until Gecko Hayate's reminder snapped him back to himself. With a swagger, he returned to the second-floor stands. The screen flickered, and the next matchup appeared, making many in the audience sit up straighter. Izanami versus Rock Lee. Chapter 69. Izayoi vs. Rock Lee. Great. When Rock Lee saw his opponent was Izayoi, he couldn't help clenching his fists and shouting, an excited grin on his face. He had wanted to challenge Izayoi before, but had been stopped by Uchiha Sasuke. After seeing Sasuke's strength and his behavior toward Izayoi, Lee's desire to fight had only grown. Now he finally had his chance. Lee, go and unleash your youth. Might Guy patted him on the shoulder, beaming. Yes, Guy-sensei. Rock Lee snapped to attention, returning the grin. A white light flashed around him. Tenten, feeling the stares, buried her face in her hands in embarrassment. Hyuga Neji, expressionless, warned calmly. Lee, your opponent isn't simple. His chakra is astonishing, and he's also close to Lady Hinata. Be careful. I understand. Lee nodded, his face suddenly serious. He stepped onto the railing, vaulted down, and landed with a flip. Izayoi, surprised to be matched with Rock Lee, had expected to face Gaara, or perhaps Yoroi Akado, or Shino Aburame, or even get a bye. He'd heard of Lee's 8 gates technique and was intrigued. As he prepared to jump down, Hinata's soft voice came at his ear. Izayoi-kun, give me the camera. Okay. Izayoi handed it over. Hinata clenched her small fists. Gambat! Watch my performance, Izayoi replied with a confident smile. Then, as if remembering something, he hooked a foot over the railing, leaned close to Hinata, and whispered, If I win, remember to give me a reward when we get back. With that, he slipped away and reappeared in the arena. Kurenai Yuhi smiled teasingly. Hinata's face flushed. She lifted the camera to hide behind it and angled herself for the best light. Izayoi, please take care of me. Rock Lee struck his starting pose facing Izayoi, eyes fierce with fighting spirit. Before we begin, take off your weights, Izayoi said. Although this is a match between shinobi of the same village, I will show no mercy in battle. If you insist on showing off, don't be surprised if you're defeated instantly. Amazing. You could tell at a glance, Lee said in surprise, his fighting spirit only increasing. But remembering his promise to Guy-sensei, his expression flickered with hesitation. Lee, take them off. Might Guy's voice cut through the hesitation. He gave Lee a thumbs up. This is an opponent worth giving your all for. I allow it. Yes, Guy-sensei. Lee's eyes filled with tears of joy as he sat down excitedly and began unlashing the heavy weights from his legs. What? That boy with the bushy brows is wearing weights! Naruto and Sakura in Team 7 were already stunned. Sasuke sneered. They're just blocks of iron. But his pupils tightened sharply the next instant. Boom. 2 loud, overlapping bangs echoed. Dust burst up in a corner of the arena. When it settled, the ground where the iron weights had been lay sunken. The earth cracked around it. Everyone stared, slack-jawed. Sasuke gripped the railing, shaken. If someone could move that fast while wearing such heavy iron, enough to need lightning-release chakra to stimulate their cells, what was his true speed? Even several jonin looked surprised. That guy is too reckless, muttered Kakashi Harake, forehead protector raised slightly to reveal the Sharingan in his left eye. Asuma Sarutobi and others watched with twitching mouths. Kurenai, unaware of Izayoi's true strength, said solemnly, Izayoi has finally met his match. Shino Aburame, hands out of his pockets and gripping the railing, stared behind his sunglasses at Izayoi, whose face remained calm and expectant. He had been classmates with this top student for 6 years and was eager now to see his real power. Has this kid mastered that ultimate technique as well? He wondered. Orochimaru, still near the arena, watched with renewed interest. It hasn't been this entertaining in a long time. Once warmed up, Rock Lee took his stance again. Izayoi, this is my strongest form. Let's settle this. Izayoi smiled and raised his index and middle fingers. Bring it on. Please take care of me. Please take care of me. Lee shifted into the fighting stance hand seal. On the viewing platform, Hiruzen Sarutobi couldn't help but smile with satisfaction. Gekko Hayate's expression turned serious. He raised his clipboard and shouted, "Round 10, Izayoi versus Rock Lee, officially begin." He stepped back onto the second-floor platform so as not to be in the way, but Lee was faster. Before Hayate could fully clear the arena, Lee vanished and reappeared at Izayoi's left, launching a low, spinning kick. Leaf Whirlwind. The attack came so fast that many examinees, including Gaara and several special jonin, couldn't react in time. Izayoi, however, was the quicker of the two in perception. As Lee's foot flashed toward him, Izayoi turned his head and exhaled a small breath. Whoosh! The airflow distorted and surged like an invisible hand, not only blocking Lee's kick but blasting him backward. It was the wind release, great breakthrough technique, similar to the one Naruto had used before. A one-handed seal? Such rapid jutsu execution. A few observant jonin murmured. To everyone watching, Izayoi had appeared to stand still with his hands concealed in his wide sleeves, yet he somehow predicted Lee's position, turned, and spat out a gust that swelled into an invisible hand, grabbing Lee and throwing him toward the wall. The entire exchange, from Gekko Hayate stepping onto the platform to Lee's attack and being blown back, lasted less than 3 seconds. That short span was enough for most of the examinees to see how far they still had to go compared to Lee and Izayoi. Sasuke snapped to attention and activated his Sharingan. Kakashi pulled his forehead protector higher, revealing the 3 Tomoe Sharingan in his left eye, both of them staring intently at the two youths below. They both had the feeling that these two would put on a spectacular battle. Chapter 70, Ninjutsu Genius versus Taijutsu Genius, Chidori Style and 8 Gates. He's really strong. Rock Lee, having been driven back by the rushing wind, planted his feet against the wall and watched Izanami with breathless excitement. When the airflow eased, he vanished, but he did not reappear near Izanami. Instead, he became a dark afterimage that streaked around him. The blur whipped up a cloud of dust, a white vortex surrounding Izanami. In the next instant, Rock Lee materialized in front of him and threw a punch. Izanami's expression remained calm. Just before the blow landed, it froze. Both the punch and the image of Lee were only an afterimage. "Leaf Great Whirlwind," someone shouted, and a wind vortex erupted to Izanami's right, resolving into Rock Lee's form. A 360-degree charged spinning kick swept at Izanami. Any genin in this generation, apart from Shino with his insect clones, would probably have been finished by that kick. But not Izanami. Lee's speed was incredible, but Izanami's was faster. The spinning kick was stopped before it reached him, not by a wind release technique, but by Izanami's forearm. The clash sent a shockwave of air from where Izanami's forearm met Lee's calf. The forearm stayed immobile, like steel beneath his sleeve. Under Rock Lee's wide-eyed stare, Izanami shifted from blocking to grappling, snatching Lee's ankle and turning to use his momentum to throw him, intending to slam him hard into the ground. With astonishing arm strength, Rock Lee planted both hands and pushed off, breaking the thrown momentum and flipping to his feet. Izanami did not press the attack. He simply withdrew his hand and continued to watch Lee without moving a single step. The other rookies were stunned. "Does he even know Earth Release?" One of the jonin muttered. Kakashi's Sharingan twitched as he, one of the few who had seen the block clearly, pieced it together. To everyone else, Izanami's taijutsu alone seemed enough to suppress the weighted Lee. But Kakashi realized Izanami was something else entirely, a ninjutsu prodigy. The lightning release he'd used to boost speed, the fire dragon tornado in the death forest, the wind release, and now an earth release technique, Izanami had already shown mastery of 4 elements. Could he be an all-elements user? Kakashi's mind raced. Even if so, mastering them this well at such a young age would take extraordinary talent and training. No wonder the Hyuga hadn't stopped their heir from associating with him. Someone had recognized the raw gem early. Orochimaru, watching with a sly smile, echoed the thought. Such chakra, such talent, an awakened bloodline from an earlier generation. Senju or Uzumaki, perhaps? The clash of battle resumed. Rock Lee, despite being consistently outmaneuvered, showed no discouragement. He attacked with increasing intensity, growing stronger with each exchange. Izanami stopped using layered ninjutsu to defend and instead opened the mind's eye of the Kagura for sensing, while still using lightning release to stimulate his cells and boost his speed. The two moved into an intense taijutsu duel. On the training hall floor, two after images, like spinning tops, collided again and again. Each impact flashed their forms before they darted to another position. Their fists and feet met in gusts of invisible chakra-laced air that exploded outward. Their speed climbed until they were no longer confined to the ground, leaping into the air in a blur. Sasuke's eyes struggled to keep up. Naruto and the others were bewildered. Even some jonin not specialized in sensing watched in shock. This generation had produced two monsters. Several jonin sighed. What incredible nature transformation, and what precise chakra control. Sasuke and Hinata both used lightning release to boost speed, but neither could match Izanami, not in the sense that when he surged his speed, he instantly and perfectly controlled his body. He mastered the state immediately and pushed to the extreme, a hallmark of both supreme nature transformation and exceptional chakra control. With that level of control, it was no surprise he had already learned multiple elements at such a young age. Many imagined him becoming a versatile jonin within a few years, but they had still underestimated him. After countless exchanges, both fighters finally broke apart. Rock Lee panted, sweat on his brow. Izanami stood calm, smiling. "Your taijutsu is powerful," Izanami said, "but if this is all you have, the fight will end quickly. Do you have any stronger techniques?" Lee glanced toward Might Guy. Guy grinned and gave him a thumbs up. Lee's face lit up. He unwound the bandages on his hands. "I have more powerful techniques," he said. "They're forbidden against comrades. The last time I fought Sasuke, Guy-sensei punished me because I nearly broke that taboo. But if my opponent is Izanami, I believe you can withstand the power of the lotus." With bandages trailing, Lee looked at Izanami with resolve. "I will use this move to prove that effort can beat genius." The examinees leaned forward. Even the jonin watched intently. Kakashi, knowing Guy's teaching methods, had a thought. Had Guy taught him that forbidden jutsu? The thought was answered moments later. In the Byakugan and Sharingan, chakra surged through Lee's head and into every meridian, as if a blockage had been removed. His aura changed. Many jonin felt an oppressive force rolling from him, enough to dominate even higher-ranked shinobi. Izanami noticed and turned fully serious. Without using the reincarnation eye, he was curious about the true power of the 8 gates, one of the 3 great secret techniques. Lee's figure flickered and appeared mere meters from Izanami, striking a straight punch. Izanami moved to block the wrist, but Lee vanished and reappeared behind him. His fist became a claw, reaching to bind Izanami with bandages. At the same time, a sound like converging electricity crackled. Blue and white arcs, like serpents, coiled about Izanami's body. Rock Lee's hand never touched him before he staggered back, jolted by the electricity. Voices rose from the second-floor stands. Hidden Cloud's lightning release chakra mode? No, this is just shape transformation. Such a talent, nature transformation and shape transformation both. The jonin in the stands only added to the astonishment. Kurenai Yuhi felt a bitter smile. Hokage had assigned teams wrong. Izanami should have been Kakashi's student. Under Kakashi, he might have learned countless 5-element techniques, perhaps Chidori itself, maybe even the S-rank lightning cutter formed by combining nature transformation and shape transformation. Sasuke's eyes flashed. So lightning release can be used like that. He had no idea he was seeing the roots of what he would one day develop into his own Chidori techniques. Then Izanami moved. Blue and white arcs coiled around his whole body as he used his own Chidori stream to sprint forward and strike. Rock Lee instinctively raised both hands to block, but his eyes bulged and his face twisted in pain as Izanami's blow caught him, then delivered a kick to the stomach that sent Lee crashing into the wall. The impact dented the wall and spidered cracks out from the point of contact. Izanami did not follow up. He smiled, electricity rippling about him. "Increasing your speed by 20% isn't what I'd call a true taboo," he said. "You can be stronger. Show me your real trump card." Lee picked himself up silently. The Byakugan and Sharingan users and the sensing specialists all saw something and their pupils tightened. 8 gates. 3rd gate, gate of life, open. Lee crossed his arms. The air around him suddenly spiraled upward. When he raised his head, his eyes were white and pupilless. His face flushed, veins standing out on his forehead. White steam rolled off his body and a guttural roar burst from him. Green energy flared, radiating out as the third gate opened. Chapter 71. Remarks on the Launch. The briefing room hummed with low, nervous energy. Screens along the walls showed the rocket in brilliant detail, every seam and thruster labeled and magnified. The crew gathered around the rectangular table, faces lit by the glow. Commander Elise Marlowe stood at the head of the table, hands folded, and met each person's eyes before she spoke. "We'll keep this short and clear," she said. 10 updates. Everything you need to know before we go is right here. If you have questions, hold them until the end. We'll cover contingencies once the main points are clear. 1. Launch window and weather. The launch window opens at 09:14 local and stays open for 12 minutes, Elise began. Forecast currently shows minimal upper-level wind shear and negligible precipitation. Expect a nominal go for weather. Ground winds have dropped to acceptable limits. If conditions change, we'll execute the scrub protocol and stand down for the next available window. 2. Vehicle status. Vehicle systems are green across the board, the flight engineer reported. Propellant loads are at nominal density and pressure. Avionics passed their final pre-flight diagnostics an hour ago. Minor valve hysteresis observed on the starboard second stage feed but cleared during the last cycle. This is tracked and does not affect launch. 3. Payload integrity. The satellite stack is secure, the payload officer said. All instruments powered, thermal control maintaining parameters. Deployment sequence validated in simulations. We've triple-checked fasteners and release mechanisms. Expect separation at T+011:30 for Stage 2 upper stage operation. 4. Crew health and readiness. Medical cleared everyone this morning. No significant changes since the last check. Hydration and sleep cycles were monitored. Only minor fatigue reported by 2 crew members, but within acceptable limits. If anyone feels unwell pre-launch, say so now. Safety first. 5. Communications and tracking. Primary comms via the orbital relay network are verified, the communications lead confirmed. We have redundant channels on 2 independent bands. Tracking stations at 3 points along the ascent corridor have active locks. In the event of a blackout, we have a predefined reconnection timeline. Do not attempt manual transmission unless instructed. 6. Abort modes and procedures. Abort modes are set and tested, Elise said crisply. Primary abort for the first 2 minutes is a guided escape to an offshore recovery area. After that, the abort profile shifts to stage-specific contingencies. The recovery ships and helicopters are in position. Review your assigned evacuation and rescue protocols. We practiced them yesterday. 7. Ground support and range safety. Range safety gave a final thumbs up 30 minutes ago, the range officer reported. Flight termination system is armed and will only be used under strict criteria. Clear zones are in effect and maritime notices are posted. Any civilian vessels approaching the corridor will be diverted by authorities. 8. Software and autonomy. Autonomy stack has one queued patch that was applied 3 hours ago, the software lead said. No regressions detected. The guidance and navigation algorithms have been validated against the latest atmospheric model. We'll be monitoring telemetry closely for any anomalies that require a manual override. 9. Contingency fuel and trajectory. We have a marginal fuel reserve for a minor trajectory compensation burn during Stage 2, the propulsion chief explained. Fuel margins are within mission parameters. Trajectory predicts nominal insertion into the planned orbit with a conservative error corridor. If we encounter an engine underperformance, we can adjust the burn profile to still achieve payload orbit or place it in a safe interim orbit for later correction. 10. Final checks and launch cadence. Final crew suits check at T45 minutes, Elise concluded. Hard hat and tether protocols at T30. Final go-no-go poll begins at T6 minutes. We transition to internal channels at T3 and begin terminal count at T1 minute. Everyone knows their role. Stay calm, speak clearly, and follow the checklist. She paused, letting the words settle. The screens showed the launch pad, a calm tower bathed in morning light. She could hear the faint hum of coolant systems and the distant murmur of ground crew through the open comms. Remember why we're here, Elise said, softer now. Not for the spectacle, but for the people who will use this satellite. The scientists, the educators, the the kids who will track our path and dream bigger because they can see us reach farther. We've done the prep. Trust your training. Trust your teammates. A ripple of nods moved around the table. The tension eased into focused determination. Crew members checked straps, masks, and final equipment. The comms panel chimed, the automated voice beginning the checklist that would carry them to launch. Stand by for final polling in 6 minutes, the mission director called. This is it. Keep calm. Execute precisely. Outside, on the pad, the flame trench steamed as purge lines flowed and the ground settled into the rhythm of a world intent on liftoff. Inside the room, the crew gathered their resolve. The countdown began to assert its steady beat, and the path they had rehearsed 1,000 times became at last real. They moved toward the gantry with methodical steps, measured, confident. The launch would either be a clean insertion into history, or it would test every contingency they'd rehearsed. Either way, they were ready. The terminal count reached T3 minutes. The room went quiet, except for the soft, steady voice of the automated announcer and the heartbeat of the mission itself. Chapter 72, Storm Release, Judgment, Secret Skill vs. Secret Skill. What's up with that bushy-browed guy? So much chakra. What kind of jutsu is this? All the examinees stared in shock at Rock Lee. His whole body shimmered with green light. Blue chakra flames licked around him, the air itself rippling and rising. His hair stood on end. Hyuga Neji's Byakugan and Uchiha Sasuke's Sharingan both strained, their eyes trembling with the force of the display. Nobody had expected Lee to be this strong. The Konoha Jonin watching had the same shocked, fearful look. This boy radiated lethal danger. 8 gates. I never expected he had actually achieved this forbidden technique, one muttered. Orochimaru, disguised among the sound shinobi, took Lee seriously as well. Konoha's new generation is full of prodigies, he thought. Like the Flying Thunder God technique, the 8 gates is a notorious forbidden technique in the ninja world. Most shinobi who want to be well-rounded jonin must master at least 2 nature transformations. Otherwise, they remain special jonin. Might Guy is the rare taijutsu-only jonin who rose to the top because he mastered the 8 gates. To open the gates, a shinobi's body must be tempered beyond ordinary limits, able to withstand violent chakra surges in the meridians. Orochimaru had never seen anyone open the 3rd gate at 12 or 13. But this boy was beyond even that. Lee tightened his fists, bent lower, and gritted his teeth. 8 gates, 4th gate, Pain Gate, open! He roared. A blast of air swept the entire hall. The green aura intensified. Orochimaru and Kakashi Hatake's eyes narrowed. The 4th gate was the real turning point of the 8 gates. Even Hiruzen Sarutobi set down his pipe and stared at Izanami with a grave expression, ready to stop the match if Izanami himself seemed threatened. The 8 gates are so unbalanced, they can ruin a fair test. Lee had already adapted to the 4th gate and took a running start. Everyone focused. Izanami even used the mind's eye of the Kagura to lock onto him. Crack. Boom. The floor split, then detonated. Lee's figure vanished. This time, he didn't simply remove his weights and leave an afterimage. He slammed through the floor, tearing up a cloud of dust, and rocketed toward Izanami with a wind like a wind release. His speed and power were almost inhuman. So fast, Izanami thought, impressed despite himself. The mind's eye could track Lee's trajectory, but it couldn't stimulate his cells with lightning chakra to match that speed. If opening the 1st gate only let him reach 100%, the 4th gate put him well beyond 200%. Lee had already surpassed Izanami in raw speed and strength. Izanami clapped his hands and sent a gust of wind out. The dust was blown away, only to reveal that Lee had reappeared behind him. Electric arcs crackled around Izanami. Lee leaned forward and brought up a sonic boom cloud between them. Boom. The shockwave tore through the arcs and slammed into Izanami. The crowd expected to see him blown away, but instead his body dissolved into white smoke and a wooden log fell to the floor. Substitution jutsu. Lee looked up to see Izanami's true body suspended near the ceiling, wrapped in a wind current. "He's won," shouted Might Guy, who had been praying with clasped hands. Guy had feared Izanami would use speed to fight Lee in a war of attrition. The gate's side effects were still severe for a growing boy, and a lengthy fight would exhaust him. But Izanami, floating in the air on wind release, made himself a sitting target. Lee didn't hesitate. He bent his knees, clenched his fists, and gritted his teeth again. 8 gates, 5th gate, limit gate, open. Boom! Another violent shockwave crashed out, shattering the floor and sweeping the 2nd floor. The hall filled with dust. Weaker shinobi who couldn't sense chakra lost the right even to watch. Kakashi and the other Konoha Jonin tensed, prepared to intervene for Izanami, who hung suspended beneath the ceiling. Then the expressions of the important figures, Hiruzen and Orochimaru among them, shifted. Izanami opened his hands toward the floor and formed a blue vortex under his palm. More vortices appeared and merged into a blue and white sphere of energy. A few Jonin recognized it immediately. "That's a Rasengan?" someone gasped. "How could this young man know the 4th Hokage's Rasengan?" another asked. But they noticed quickly that this wasn't a normal Rasengan. The sphere kept growing until it was larger than an adult's head. Inside it, 2 fist-sized orbs appeared. At first they matched the large sphere's color, blue and white, but then the 2 small spheres separated, one bright white like lightning, the other deep blue like water. Hiruzen, Orochimaru, and Kakashi's faces tightened. Rasengan is an A-rank ninjutsu without a nature transformation, a supreme form manipulation technique. Adding a nature transformation to it would be like giving Chidori shape transformation, turning it into the lightning cutter, an S-rank lightning release secret skill. And Izanami had not added just 1 nature transformation, but 2. What kind of power would that create? The worry shifted, not for Izanami, but for Rock Lee. Boom. A sonic boom signaled Lee's approach. He was a green blur. The air itself warped as he leapt, literally stepping on the air as he closed at impossible speed. Izanami's mind's eye tracked him. Inside the twin spheres in his hand, the 2 inner orbs spun like Tomoe in a Sharingan, at first clockwise, then suddenly one reversed and the 2 collided. Their clash didn't make the Super Hurricane serial spheres explode. Instead, they fused into brilliant beams that filled the sphere with dazzling light. "Judgment!" Izanami shouted. The energy sphere condensed into a pillar of light and lashed downward. "Reverse Lotus!" he cried as the beam expanded. Lee, moving with a shockwave of his own, had no room to dodge in the cramped hall. He thrust forward the charged attack he'd prepared. A punch wrapped in green light, smashing the air and producing a terrifying blast. His shockwave collided head-on with the descending laser pillar. Secret skill versus secret skill. Taijutsu against a fused storm release technique, combining water and lightning. Neither side were Genin techniques. This level was beyond many Jonin as well. For a heartbeat, the 2 forces wrestled. Then Lee's shockwave vanished, shredded by the laser, and the beam swallowed him. "Lee!" Might Guy screamed. "Lightning cutter!" Kakashi shouted. Just before the pillar burned into the floor and threatened to gouge a hole of unknown depth in the hall, a figure appeared and pressed a mass of lightning into the beam. Kakashi's lightning cutter struck the laser and severed the section that had engulfed Lee. An afterimage flashed. Gekko Hayate moved in with body flicker and caught Lee, unconscious, maybe worse, and disappeared with him. Boom. The remaining pillar slammed into the ground. The center tower shuddered. Examinees who hadn't grabbed the rails or anchored themselves with chakra were thrown to the floor. They clung to the railings, disheveled and wide-eyed, watching the beam contract and shrink into a line until at last it vanished. Where the light had struck, the floor was gone. There was a bottomless black hole gaping in the middle of the hall. "Lee, are you all right? Lee, wake up! Quick!" The hall fell deadly silent. Only Might Guy's panicked voice cut through it. It was no surprise why he was frantic. Rock Lee lay scorched and blackened, his clothes and skin charred. The strain from the 8 gates combined with the after effects of that storm release secret skill had his body still steaming faintly. He'd lost consciousness. If not for the shallow rise and fall of his chest, he might have looked like a corpse. From Lee's still form 2 faint blue beams of light, invisible to everyone else, slipped away and drifted toward Izanami. Even in defeat, Rock Lee had proven himself. Through the 8 gates, he had displayed a resolve that registered with Izanami. "Cough. Don't worry. He's only unconscious." Gekko Hayate tried to steady the situation, already pulling out a communicator. "Medical team, hurry. We have a patient in need of urgent care." Moments later, 3 medical ninja in white coats rushed in with a stretcher and emergency supplies. They worked quickly, loading Rock Lee and carrying him out of the arena. Might Guy, having no other students fighting, followed. No one paid much attention to them. Every eye remained fixed on the vast blackened wound that had scarred the hall, and then on Izanami as he floated down. Where a minute earlier, agents and Jonin had regarded Izanami as an exceptionally skilled genin with an impressive affinity for lightning release, now their expressions had shifted to something bordering reverence. If his prior techniques had made Jonin think he might one day be an all-rounder Jonin, what they'd just witnessed elevated him to Konoha's possible trump card. Secret Skill Ninjutsu, S rank, was the sort of ability that could make a ninja an elite Jonin even without clan bloodlines, a trump card powerful enough to challenge, even represent, a Kage. Izanami had shown that kind of strength. With the right growth in wisdom, leadership, and accomplishments, an elite Jonin rank seemed inevitable. Izanami, did you develop that ninjutsu yourself? Kurenai Yuhi asked as soon as he landed. Shino Aburame and Hinata Hyuga stood nearby, eyes fixed on him. Hinata's gaze was openly admiring. Izanami nodded with a small smile. I told you I'd make your jaws drop. Did I disappoint? You certainly didn't. Kurenai gave his shoulder a hard, proud pat. You were hiding your strength all this time. She'd expected him to be talented, perhaps this era's Kakashi, but he'd exceeded even that. Kakashi had become an all-rounder Jonin by 12 and developed the Chidori, but comparing that to Izanami's storm release, judgment felt like comparing two different leagues. Kurenai felt silly for having made any bet at all. The outcome had been decided long ago. Orochimaru watched too, his expression a mix of appreciation and hungry curiosity. He perfected the Rasengan to this level, a true genius, he murmured. Izanami's display reminded Orochimaru of his younger self and of countless exceptional commoners he'd observed. Satisfied, he slipped away quietly. Nearby, a Jonin assigned to guard Hiruzen Sarutobi used an earth release technique to repair the blackened wound left in the hall. The chakra and time needed were extraordinary. Those watching again felt the weight of the storm release secret skill. Fusing lightning and water natures into storm release was not trivial. Had Izanami somehow unlocked a bloodline limit? Kurenai asked the question out loud. Izanami, did you synthesize a storm release bloodline limit? No. Izanami shook his head. I used that energy sphere as a carrier and relied on ultra-high-speed rotation to fuse the two nature transformations, just barely. It's an advanced composite secret skill. I can't directly convert chakra into storm release yet. When he first combined the natures, Izanami himself had been startled. After checking his body and his status panel, though, he found no entry for a storm release bloodline. The synthesis was the result of exceptional chakra control, and perhaps the reincarnation eye's influence. Still, storm release, judgment was only one of his secret skills. With the hall repaired, the exam resumed. Izanami's match with Rock Lee had been the 10th round. Of the original 23 examinees, only 3 remained afterward: Gaara, Yoroi Akato, and Shino Aburame. One of them would get a bye. The pairing list refreshed on the screen: Gaara versus Yoroi Akato. Izanami threw Shino a quick, odd look. Shino, sensitive as ever, noticed immediately. Something wrong? He asked. No, nothing. Izanami forced a smile inwardly. He didn't want to tell Shino the truth, that the proctors had likely overlooked him because his presence was so quiet. The 11th match ended almost without suspense. Gaara defeated Yoroi decisively. If Yoroi hadn't been wearing a Konoha headband, and if Gekko Hayate hadn't stepped in to end it, Gaara's sand coffin might have crushed him entirely. Yoroi's chakra absorption couldn't compare to Zaku Abumi's more devastating techniques, and Gaara's victory was final. 11 examinees advanced to the main stage: Tosan Kinuta, Uchiha Sasuke, Hinata Hyuga, Kankuro, Temari, Nara Shikamaru, Uzumaki Naruto, Hyuga Neji, Izanami, Gaara, and Shino Aburame. As I said before, the Chunin exams are a microcosm of the Allied Nations' warfare, Hiruzen announced. The main examination will draw dignitaries and many spectators. These people may become your future clients. You have 1 month to prepare. Improve yourselves, then gather at Konoha's Plaza at 10 a.m. sharp. Anko Midarashi came forward with a box of lots. 11 competitors, 5 rounds, and 1 lucky bye. The draws were made and written on a board. Number 1, Uzumaki Naruto versus number 2, Tosan Kinuta. Number 3, Hinata Hyuga versus number 4, Temari. Number 5, Nara Shikamaru versus number 6, Kankuro. Number 7, Izanami versus number 8, Gara, no. 9, Uchiha Sasuke versus number 10, Hyuga Neji. The lucky buy, Shino Aburame. A few curious stares landed on Shino. He had at last his moment in the light. A corner of his mouth that had been hidden beneath his collar twitched in a private smile. After the draw, the examinees followed their guide Jonin out of the forest of death. Kurenai looped an arm around Hinata and teased teammate. To celebrate advancing, your sensei is treating you to a big meal. Thank you, Red Sensei. Hinata replied gratefully. The team had lived on simple fare in the tower for days. They accepted readily. They ate in the early evening. Night had already fallen by the time they finished. Hinata didn't head straight home. Instead, she stopped by Izanami's house to develop the photos they'd taken together. That last palm strike of yours was amazing, Hinata, Izanami said with a smile as they sat at his desk, examining fresh prints. Hey, Izanami's storm release. Judgment was incredible, too. I didn't expect your secret skill to be storm release, Hinata replied, her voice small and proud. Do you think, Izanami teased suddenly, if I work hard, our child might inherit storm release someday? Hinata went pink instantly, flustered and fumbling. I don't know. But in her head, she was already imagining their child. Hair like theirs, and what of the eyes? Byakugan, blue like Izanami's, or perhaps the reincarnation eye? Would he prefer a boy or a girl? Warmth and embarrassment rose in her. Her pale lavender eyes shimmered and she grew breathy. A hand on her shoulder pulled her back to the present. Izanami leaned in, mischievous. Remember what I told you before the fight? A reward, Hinata whispered, confused. You said, a reward? I won. You owe me a reward. He said it like a declaration. Hinata blushed deeper, flustered. And what about my reward? She wasn't going to be outmaneuvered. Her cheeks still tinged pink. She asked softly, since I advanced too, what do you plan to give me? I have something. Izanami put a finger to his lips and smiled. But it's something I can only give you later. Later? Hinata tilted her head, already guessing. She didn't push. What do you want as your reward? Photos, Izanami said at once. He had a plan. He stood, opened his wardrobe, and took out 2 neatly wrapped gift boxes. A clone had delivered them before the exams, but he hadn't had the chance to present them because of Hanabi and the exam chaos. He handed both boxes to Hinata, excitement written all over him. I want to take some artistic photos. Artistic photos? Hinata peered at the boxes, suspecting clothing inside, perhaps more sailor uniforms or custom outfits Izanami had made. She unwrapped them with shaking hands. When she saw what was inside, her cheeks flared crimson. She went from pink to incandescent in an instant. These are for Hanabi, right? She stammered, eyes spinning. No, they're for you. Izanami lifted out a tiny white short-sleeved top. This is a gym uniform with matching shorts. Under that is a one-piece school swimsuit. The other box has a cheerleader outfit and pom-poms. They were small, very small. Hinata's head felt light, as if steam were rising from it. Her heart fluttered in a way she wasn't used to. If not for the careful training and support she'd had, she might have fainted right then. Please, Hinata. Izanami folded his hands and said earnestly, this is my lifelong wish. Somehow, dazed, she agreed. 10 minutes later, she emerged from the bathroom in the too small gym uniform. Izanami, having activated his reincarnation eye to ensure privacy, excused himself to pretend he wasn't flustered, but his face betrayed him. He clamped one hand to his nose. When he looked, it was bloody. Even the composed Izanami, part Otsutsuki, part something else, couldn't help a nosebleed. I'm fine, he said, a little too quickly, stuffing cotton up his nostrils. Maybe dinner was too spicy. His voice trembled and his gaze kept flicking to Hinata. He cleared his throat. Lie on your side and I'll show you some poses. Hinata, head lowered, spoke in that soft, barely audible tone. Okay. She lay on her side as instructed, propped up on a pillow. Izanami kept the main lights off, using only the bathroom and desk lamps for a softer effect. He guided her hands into a peace sign, checked angles, and clicked the shutter. A bright flash lit the room. Then, suddenly, another jet of blood shot from Izanami's nose and splattered faintly on the quilt. Hinata's shyness evaporated in a rush of concern. Izanami, why are you bleeding? Are you all right? I'm fine, he insisted, voice oddly distant. He took another shot, then tried to get her attention. Did you forget something? Hinata tilted her head in puzzlement. Izanami scratched the back of his head, looking embarrassingly evasive. She followed his line of sight, and immediate heat flushed her face. Steam seemed to rise from her very head. Her small features tightened, her eyes spiraled into a dizzy mosquito coil pattern, and she fainted. Since Izanami's modifications, Hinata's constitution had been far tougher than in the original timeline. She still blushed and grew bashful, but blacking out had never happened, until now. That she fainted here, in his room, wearing such outfits and under such circumstances, showed she'd truly reached a new limit. Chapter 74. Sister-in-law returns. Father-in-law is satisfied after the art photo incident. Hinata didn't show herself to Izanami for days. That was unheard of. She'd tolerated a few squeezes on the hand exerciser before. 2 layers of protection made that bearable, but being seen naked and having photos taken was beyond her limits. Her resistance was probably down to 0 or worse. Until she recovered, she wouldn't dare face Izanami. The offending limited edition photo set, meanwhile, had been locked in a passworded album and sealed away with the camera in a wristband-style sealing scroll Izanami carried at all times. Oni-chan, my sister told me to tell you she's going to train with father to learn a more powerful gentle fist secret technique. She might not be able to come over this month, Hanabi relayed. On July 21st, Hanabi was summoned to Izanami's house. After delivering Hinata's message, she curled up against his arm and fluttered her eyelashes. Oni-chan, Hanabi's on summer vacation now. Since you're not using your main body to train, can you play with me while you're free? Sure. What do you want to do? Izanami asked, smiling as he ruffled her hair and pinched her cheek. Let me think. Hanabi pursed her lips in mock distress. I've been all over Central Street. I'm tired of eating all the tasty food. What else is there to do? Even after years of seeing his little sister-in-law, Izanami still found her charm disarming. He picked her up, set her on his lap, and played with her bangs. If you're bored of Konoha, how about Oni-chan takes you on a trip? Really? Hanabi's eyes lit up, then clouded. But father won't let me leave for long. There are guardians watching me. If I wander too far, they'll stop me. No problem. I'll sneak you out. Izanami grinned confidently. Go talk to your sister and have her persuade your father. Pack a few changes of clothes, hide them in a sealing scroll, and Oni-chan will take you. Okay, Hanabi clapped, practically vibrating with excitement. I'll go pack right away. Hide your clothes in the sealing scroll, Izanami warned. If you don't, you'll be caught before you even leave the house, and Oni-chan won't be held responsible. Oni-chan, I'm going to pack now. Wait for me. She hopped off his lap, put on her shoes at the door, and was gone. 15 minutes later, the door opened again. Oni-chan, I'm ready. Still in her yellow-brown kimono, hands empty, Hanabi launched herself into Izanami's arms. When do we leave? Not yet. Let's buy a few things first. Izanami checked the clock, 11:35, then took her hand and led her out. Their first stop was the camera shop he frequented. Yo, little brother, back for film again? Young people have boundless energy. Take pictures all day and never get tired, the shopkeeper teased. I want to record myself and those around me before I come of age, so I can look back on my youth, Izanami said. Wish I'd thought of that when I was a kid. I can't even remember what I looked like back then, the owner said wistfully. I'll take 20 rolls, Izanami said. 20% off, the man offered. Thanks. After buying film, they picked up Hanabi's favorite bananas, mochi, and milk, stashing everything in the sealing scroll. Hanabi suddenly looked worried. Don't we need a village departure permit? No, and anyway, I'm not a Chunin squad leader, so I can't apply for one, Izanami replied. Hanabi's face fell. If we just leave like this, will the village punish you? As long as we don't get caught, we'll be fine. Izanami steered her into a narrow alley, bent down and smiled. Get on. Oni-chan will take you out. She lay across his back, arms around his neck, grinning. Let's go. Izanami's figure blurred and vanished into the alley. The moment they disappeared, a Byakugan-wielding guard materialized and opened his eyes wide. Byakugan, open, he breathed, then surged forward in a blink. What speed! His vision tracked the spot where they had been, and then there was nothing. The place where Izanami and second Miss Hanabi had been was now empty, and in his Byakugan's long-range sight, he realized they were no longer in Konoha at all. If he'd simply shaken them off and taken Hanabi into the countryside, fine, but removing the second miss from Konoha was beyond his authority. He retreated immediately to the Hyuga compound to report to Hiyashi. "You can go," Hiyashi said flatly when the guard explained. "Yes," the guard replied and melted into motion. When they left, the stern expression on Hiyashi's face softened into a smile. "That kid is getting bolder," he murmured, amused. "If someone ever comes knocking at your door, I won't protect you." Half an hour passed, and no one from the village reported that the second miss had been abducted. Izanami and Hanabi's departure had gone unnoticed by the sensing unit. Either Izanami knew the sensing team's rotation, or he could bypass their barriers. Either way, it was an impressive feat. Hiyashi's look said it all. He was more satisfied than angry. If Izanami had done this before the Chunin exams, Hiyashi might have been furious. But news of Izanami's exploits in the center tower had already spread through the Jonin ranks. A newly promoted Jinin, who had mastered 5 nature transformations, developed a hand-sealess ninjutsu akin to the Rasengan, and even succeeded where the 4th Hokage hadn't, elevating such a technique to an S-rank secret skill forged by fusing 2 natures was no ordinary shinobi. His storm-release secret skill required no hand seals, had tremendous range, and coupled with massive chakra reserves, could be unleashed many times over. That kind of power could threaten a Kage. Izanami had become an ace talent any village would be loath to lose. With him protecting his daughter, Hiyashi felt Hanabi was safer outside Konoha than under his own roof. Izanami's ability also raised Hiyashi's hope that his daughters might avoid being branded with the caged bird curse mark. So Hiyashi didn't object to the budding closeness between his younger daughter and her future husband. Izanami, for his part, had a simpler reason for taking Hanabi. He wasn't worried about keeping a low profile right now. Konoha's focus was on Orochimaru, and Danzo Shimura's shadow games made it unlikely anyone would target Izanami at the moment. A shinobi who possessed S-rank ninjutsu was too valuable. A possible missing nin of that caliber would be a loss Konoha couldn't stomach. If Izanami's plan went as intended, after the Chunin exams, Konoha would have few options to oppose him. Once they left the village, they headed for attractions and crowded spots, stopping to take pictures. At first, Hanabi was like any newcomer, curious and eager, dragging Izanami toward things Konoha lacked. Eventually, bored and exhausted, she activated Byakugan to search for cities. The nearest town left her disappointed. "Oni-chan, the outside world isn't as fun as Konoha," she complained. "It's so backward and so dirty." "That's to be expected," Izanami said, ruffling her hair. "Konoha's the Land of Fire's military base. The daimyo pours money into construction, so it's nicer than most places. If you want real fun, I know some prosperous cities. Want me to take you to one?" Hanabi hesitated, then shook her head. "No, let this be our first trip. Your thing is more important anyway." Izanami raised an eyebrow. "How did you know?" "Heh, I just knew." Hanabi stuck out her tongue, then play-acted hurt. She dabbed at the corner of her eye, and half crying, half laughing, she babbled, "Oni-chan didn't take me on a special trip. My heart is broken. Not 10, no, not 100 apologies will do." With theatrical shrieks, she clapped both hands over her head and crouched down, moaning, "It hurts. It hurts." "I didn't even touch you," Izanami said, flicking her forehead with an amused roll of his eyes. "You should quit being a ninja and become an actor. Start as a child star. Maybe you could rival Fujikaze Yuki someday." "You're mean. Hanabi will bite you to death," she snarled, leaping onto his back and wrapping herself around him like a vine. She nipped his shoulder, playful, not forceful, sucking a little chakra the way the Hyuga girls did. It was still early, so Izanami carried the little vampire away from the town and set out for the city where Karen lived, Sakura Street. It was one of the Land of Fire's tourist cities. Cherry trees lined the streets, and festivals bloomed every year, drawing crowds. At full speed, it was about half a day from Konoha, but Izanami wasn't in a rush. He used his reincarnation eye as they traveled to scout interesting spots, leading Hanabi from one photo-worthy place to the next. They camped, hunted in the woods, photographed harvests, stayed overnight in small towns, wandered through night markets, and sampled local foods. When crowds pressed close, Hanabi loved to be carried up high so she could gloat to other children who sat on their parents' shoulders. "Look what I have, too." If Hyuga Hiyashi had seen her, he would have felt the impact. Here was his playful daughter unrestrained, releasing the side of her only Izanami seemed to bring out. Hanabi, meticulous about cleanliness, had Izanami wash and braid her hair every day, and in return, she'd scrub his back and wash his hair. After baths, she used gentle fists to massage him, something Hinata had stumbled upon when they trained together last year. The gentle fist technique was perfect for a deep, skilled massage. From clumsy beginnings, both Hyuga sisters had grown impressively proficient. Their massage skills could put any technician to shame. They also shared more intimate comforts, the same room, the same bed, the same quilt. Hinata and Hanabi both napped with Izanami when they were worn out. On more than one occasion, all three had slept under the same covers. With Hinata away, Hanabi took on the role of alarm clock. Unlike Hinata's gentle nudges, Hanabi's wake-ups were energetic. She'd straddle his stomach and tickle him with her bangs, grab his arm for a morning bite, or employ a gentle chakra-sucking nibble. Before waking him, she'd sometimes snap ugly photos of him, stash the film, and plan to develop them later as blackmail. They spent over a week traveling and getting closer, and at last they reached Sakura Street. Chapter 75, Big Gift, Sister-in-Law, and Karen. Izayoi-kun, you're here. Izanami had barely stepped out of the villa with Hanabi when a voice called to them. In an instant, Karen materialized before them. Her red eyes, the same color as her hair, fixed on Izanami, and then her face broke into a bright, delighted smile. Yes, this time it's my main body. Izanami nodded and smiled. You've done well, Karen. Not hard at all. Karen waved her hand, gratitude shining in her face. Compared to life in Grass Ninja Village, this place is paradise. Even though I only helped Izayoi-kun go to Hidden Sand Village for supplies, I get to live in a house like this and be compensated so well. I don't feel worthy. You were a huge help. Under Hanabi's pouting gaze, Izanami reached out and ruffled Karen's hair. It was soft and glossy now, a far cry from how dry it had been before. He said with a warm smile, "There are very few people in this world I can trust. You're one of them. I'm grateful for Grass Ninja Village's short-sightedness. If not for their foolishness, I wouldn't have found my clansmen during the Chunin exams." Heh! Karen is lucky to have met Izayoi-kun. I won't disappoint you. Karen basked in the head pat, grinning and promising earnestly. Hanabi watched the exchange with thoughtful eyes. So this woman was Oni-chan's clanswoman. Izanami wasn't cheating. After all, he had brought Hanabi here. Hanabi's lingering hostility melted away. After a short chat at the entrance, Izanami led Hanabi into the villa, introducing her to Karen along the way. When Karen learned Hanabi was Hinata's younger sister and had taken such good care of her in the Death Forest, she immediately doted on the girl like a younger sibling. Hanabi, you can stay at the villa with Oni-chan Karen. If you get bored, you can go out and play, Izanami said, ruffling Hanabi's hair. Oni-chan has something to take care of right now. I'll be back to play with you when I'm done. Hanabi, unusually mature for her age, nodded earnestly. Oni-chan's matters are more important. Oni-chan Karen, keeping me company, is fine. Then I'll leave Hanabi to you, Karen. Izanami smiled. Karen returned the smile with a solemn nod. Izanami-kun, don't worry. I'll take good care of Hanabi, she promised. With Hanabi entrusted to Karen, Izanami went alone to a locked door. He opened it and descended a staircase into a spacious basement. The room was crowded. Rows upon rows of figures stood in precise formation, nearly 100 of them. In one corner, several large ceiling scrolls lay on a table. All the figures wore uniform black cloaks embroidered with red clouds. Most had bandages over their faces and lifeless eyes. They were mostly ordinary puppets. Some were human puppets fashioned from corpses. Aside from the Black Ho family members, there were rogue ninja the shadow clone had hunted in recent times. Izanami activated his reincarnation eye and walked down the rows, injecting chakra into their chakra cores as if charging batteries. He muttered to himself, "Whether the system has some hidden mechanism will depend on you. Whether the entry upgrades turn out hellish or easy depends on you as well. I'm sure the Akatsuki and Danzo-sama will love this big gift." After charging all the puppets and sealing the scrolls, Izanami returned upstairs and took Hanabi and Karen out to Sakura Street. On the walk, he checked on Karen's recovery. "Karen, how's your body?" "It's fine now. I'm full of energy," Karen said, smiling with gratitude. Thanks to Izayoi-kun's treatment, and the medicinal meals the shadow clone prepared. Do you have any plans for the future? Izanami asked. We have plenty of materials and won't need supplies for a long time. Fra, do you plan to stay here and help look after things, or do you want to continue the way of the ninja? Either way, I'll teach you ninjutsu and help you get stronger. I'll do whatever you say, Karin replied resolutely. Whatever Izayoi-kun wants me to do, I'll do. I like that answer, Izanami said, patting her head. But I want to know what you really want. You're not just my subordinate. You're my clansman, my family. Whatever you choose, I'll help you achieve it. Seeing the sincerity in his face, Karin's eyes watered. Actions mattered more than words or promises. Izanami had shown her kindness in every way. She had experienced the cruelty of Grass Ninja Village and had seen how her weak body could mean an early death like her mother's. What life there offered was bleak. What she had received here was paradise. After the shadow clone had taken her away from Konoha, Karin had been placed in a villa on Sakura Street, given the vault key and free access to hundreds of millions in the safe. The shadow clone bought ingredients and medicinal herbs, hired a professional chef to prepare nourishing meals, bought expensive clothes and jewelry, and let her choose as she pleased. As she recovered, he taught her Konoha's ninja basics, tree climbing and water walking training, lent her Kurosukega's lightning blade, and guided her in cultivating lightning release nature transformation. Once she mastered that, he planned to teach her how to stimulate her cells with lightning chakra. All of this for the simple favor of going to Hidden Sand Village to buy materials, and he hadn't even followed her, showing his trust. Karin often hid her gratitude in tears. She had long since been captivated by Izanami. He was her sky, her god. She would give her life for him. So she looked up through wet lashes, smiled wide, and said, Izanami-kun, I want to be a ninja. As long as I become an all-around ninja, I can help you better. Izanami, unaware of this inner thought, smiled back. All right, I'll help you become one of the most powerful kunoichi. They shared a grin, and Hanabi piped up, asserting her presence. Oni-chan, what about Hanabi? Izami couldn't resist pinching his cute sister-in-law's cheek. Hanabi will definitely be the most powerful kunoichi in the future. Hehe, I'll remember that. When I go back, I'll tell Oni-chan that Oni-chan said I'm the strongest. Hanabi stuck out her tongue and giggled. Izanami chuckled, growing theatrical. Oni-chan said, in the future. Right now, your Oni-chan is definitely the most powerful. Huh, how could you say that? He suddenly mimicked Hanabi from a few days earlier, clutching his chest and pretending to be wounded. Hanabi wanted to trick Oni-chan. It broke Oni-chan's fragile heart. Not even 10, no 100 massages will make it better. Oni-chan, I was wrong. Hanabi jumped into his arms, nuzzling his chest. She glanced up and put on a beseeching face. Hanabi promises. Will Oni-chan forgive me? Oni-chan was only joking. Come on, I'll take you to see the cherry blossoms. Once again charmed by his little sister-in-law, Izanami flicked her nose, smoothed her plump cheeks, then lifted her under the arms and slung her over his shoulder. With Hanabi perched comfortably and Karin at his side, he set off toward the cherry blossoms, expertly in mount mode and smiling the whole way. Chapter 76, Jealous Hinata. The official match begins. Good times never last. In the blink of an eye, it was August 5th, Konoha year 60, only 2 days before the official matches of the third exam. Izanami, who had taken Hanabi out for half a month, finally prepared to leave with several large scrolls and reluctantly said goodbye to Karin. Before he left, he handed one last instruction to her. Karin, there's a scroll on my study table I didn't have time to put away. It has the training method for a jutsu. After I go, make sure you practice diligently. I want to see you have it down when I return. At the promise that he would come back in a little while, Karin instantly straightened, snapped to attention, and replied, Yes, I won't let you down, Izanami. Then we'll be off. Goodbye. One-chan Karin. Bye-bye, Hanabi called, waving. Karin smiled and waved back as Izanami hoisted Hanabi onto his back and vanished with a body flicker technique. At 6 in the evening, true to his word, Izanami returned to Konoha with Hanabi. Walking down Central Street, Hanabi looked around at the crowds and sighed. There are so many carriages and so many people. The official matches are the day after tomorrow, Izanami said with a smile. Those ordinary folks don't know about the body flicker technique. Of course they'll want to come early. Oni-chan, Hanabi will definitely be there to cheer for you. Don't lose, Hanabi declared with a tiny fist raised. Don't worry, Oni-chan will win. Izanami glanced toward a certain direction, a confident smile playing on his face as he murmured, in every way. After seeing Hanabi, who had taken out the sealed scroll containing the souvenirs, back to the Hyuga Estate's entrance and waving her off, Izanami returned home to finish preparing for the big event. August 7th, Konoha Year 60. At dawn, Central Street filled with people and noise. By midday, the plaza was already alive with activity. Fireworks were even set off. Nobles in finery, merchants in carriages and palanquins, everyone hurried toward Konoha's plaza. An hour before the exam, the square was packed. Those who'd come from afar but failed to get tickets even blocked the entrance and argued with the ninja guards. Once they learned they couldn't enter, many simply lingered outside, hoping to catch a glimpse or at least hear the sounds from within. It was a shame the ninja hadn't kept a stash of extra tickets to sell or set up a gambling ring outside. They'd have made a fortune. After a month away, Hinata finally left her home and came to Izanami's house. The lingering effects from the photo shoot had long since faded under the weight of longing. The moment she saw him, Hinata, uncharacteristically bold, rushed into his arms, wrapping her hands tightly around his waist, her voice and eyes full of affection. Izanami, it's been so long. Izanami returned the embrace just as tightly. Despite the closeness and pressure against him, he had no impure thoughts. It was the first time the two, who'd been inseparable since they were 6, had spent so long apart. That month had been hard on both of them. Izanami had Karin to keep him company. Hinata had none of that. Hearing about Izanami's trip with Hanabi and looking at the photos made Hinata uncharacteristically jealous of her younger sister, so she'd come as soon as the holiday ended. The separation hadn't weakened their feelings, it had deepened them. After a quiet embrace, they finally separated and had breakfast. While Hinata washed the dishes, Izanami went to his room, pulled out one of the birthday gifts Hanabi and Hinata had prepared for him, a white robe patterned with flames, and the large scrolls he'd brought back from Sakura Street, then went into the bathroom. By the time Hinata finished putting things away and untied her apron, Izanami was ready. Together they left for Konoha Plaza. The plaza was an open, spherical arena, one of the few special venues rarely open to the public except for major events. Entering through the contestants' passage, they found the chief examiner and several examinees already in the vast field. With a senbon tucked behind his ear, Izanami noticed the chief examiner's expression and thought the protagonist of the story world might still be up against a rough time. I thought you two were out on a date and had forgotten the exam, said Uchiha Sasuke as Izanami and Hinata joined the group, his sharp tongue on display immediately. Hinata reddened and drew inward shyly. Izanami chuckled. Judging by you, Sasuke, it looks like you had a hard month. Hard? On the contrary, I had a great month. Sasuke's lips curved. If we meet in the finals, I promise you a big surprise. I'm looking forward to it, Izanami replied. He glanced at Sasuke's neck. There was no sign of the Heaven's curse mark. Sasuke had likely been training with Kakashi as in the original story. If nothing unexpected had happened, Sasuke should have mastered lightning release, Chidori, meaning his lightning nature transformation had progressed to the point he could begin shaping techniques like Chidori Stream and Lightning Cutter. The stronger Sasuke became, the better Izanami felt. Minute by minute, the remaining examinees arrived. As usual, Naruto didn't show up late or being chased by a herd of bulls. On the VIP stand, Hiruzen Sarutobi sat beside Orochimaru, who was disguised as the 4th Kazekage. Checking his pocket watch, Shiranui Genma looked over the 10 examinees present and announced slowly, "Time's up. Examinees not present are automatically disqualified. Their opponents advance." All eyes turned toward the missing candidate. Of the 11 matches, only Tosan Kinuta was absent. Uzumaki Naruto, who had drawn number 1 against number 2, grinned and put his hands on his hips. "Ha! He must have been scared and ran away." "Now the rules," Shiranui continued, taking out a clipboard and crossing Tosan Kinuta's name off the roster. "You all attended the Ninja Academy, so you know about no-rules duels. For this official match, any means may be used. You won't be held responsible for killing an opponent, The death consent you signed in the second exam is still in effect. So, for those who overestimate themselves, if the fight turns critical, surrender decisively. If you die for nothing. Don't expect me to jump in and save you. With examinee number 2 disqualified, Uzumaki Naruto advances. Hyuga Hinata, who drew number 3, and Temari, who drew number 4, remain here. Everyone else returned to the contestants' area. Gaara, Kankuro, and Hyuga Neji left at once. Izanami and the other rookies cheered Hinata on as they headed to the contestants' stands. Great, One-chan's first match. One-chan, ganbare, Hanabi called from the crowd. Hanabi, mind your manners, Hyuga Hiyashi scolded. Yes, Hanabi replied and sat up straighter, composed. Temari sized up Hinata in the arena. Hinata was evidently 3 years younger than her, but her figure had developed beyond her years, attributes that would catch the eye of many, even mature women. Temari's mouth twitched. She'd heard the reports. Hinata's childhood friend was top of the class from enrollment to graduation, had mastered several nature transformations, and had developed an S-rank storm release secret technique. The two had been teammates since childhood and seemingly never apart. Even the Princess of the Sand, daughter of the Kazekage, found herself, against her will, feeling a prick of jealousy. Everything about Hinata seemed perfect. Why, even in this life, did the other half of that perfection look like this? Did she save the world in a past life? Hinata didn't know the exact thoughts racing through Temari's head, but Temari's cold remark made her blush. Women her age, and even older, often looked at her with envy or resentment, and Hinata had long felt ashamed of the attention her appearance brought. But then she remembered Izanami's fondness, how he liked her, how he sometimes even reacted with a nosebleed, and a quiet pride replaced the awkwardness. Her shyness melted away, and a small, confident smile lifted one corner of her mouth. Temari, misreading Hinata's expression as disdain, grew furious. She slammed the 3-star fan into the ground and sneered, "Young lady from a prestigious family, let's see if your strength can give my 3-star fan a show." The phrase prestigious family triggered something in Hinata. She glanced toward her younger sister and her father in the stands, and a flush of determination rose in her. Veins stood out at her temples. She fixed Temari with a steady gaze and answered quietly but firmly, "I will give it my all." Their eyes locked, sparks of tension snapping between them. The charged atmosphere caught Shiranui Genma's attention. He removed his senbon, raised his arm, and proclaimed, "Chunin Selection 3rd Exam. Official match. Hyuga Hinata versus Temari. Begin." Chapter 77, Princess vs. Princess, the coolest way to appear 2nd star. Just as Shiranui Genma brought his arm down, Temari snapped open her partially unfurled 3-star fan and converted her chakra into wind release. A small tornado howled toward Hinata. Unlike her earlier show with Tenten at the Central Tower, Temari had told everyone she wanted a proper fight with Hinata, but she truly respected her as a worthy opponent. As the eldest daughter of the 4th Kazekage and the Hidden Sands princess, Temari carried the village's honor. Losing to anyone was one thing, but she could not lose to a girl from an allied village, especially not to someone from a prestigious family. 8 trigrams. Empty palm. Facing the roaring tornado, Hinata lifted a hand and released a shockwave as powerful as wind release. The two attacks met and tore the air apart, dust billowing where they clashed. Shiranui Genma immediately shunshined backward to keep his distance, making it clear he wouldn't intervene no matter whose life might be at stake. Whoosh! Before the dust fully settled, Temari swept her fan again, clearing the air. She hadn't forgotten that her opponent possessed the Byakugan, able to see through distance and obstructions. Still, her speed was just a touch slow. As the dust cleared, Hinata was already charging. Her fingers, slender as jade but capable of shattering wooden dummies and causing internal damage, glowed with a blue chakra aura and thrust forward. A hit would stiffen Temari's body, and if her resilience failed, end the fight. Hinata's eyes widened. Just as her fingers were about to strike, Temari smiled and seemed to blur, reappearing several meters behind. That movement. You can mix nature transformation with the body flicker technique too, Temari said with a proud smirk, fully opening her 3-star fan. When it comes to wind release, the Sand Village is unrivaled. Wind release, great sickle weasel technique. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. A fierce wind howled. Distorted currents became invisible blades that gouged cracks in the ground as they swept toward Hinata. The storm covered a huge area and moved too fast to dodge even with the body flicker technique. What powerful wind-release nature transformation! Shiranui Genma, who had already backed away, had to shunshin even farther, watching the storm slice the earth with a hint of surprise. Chakra pulsed like hidden waves within that wind. Calmly, Hinata assumed her gentle fist stance and called 8 trigrams palm, rotation. Hinata's advantage as someone with enormous appetite, and thus large chakra reserves, showed. A vast surge of chakra flowed from her chakra points. With precise control, she spun, condensing the chakra into a massive, rapidly rotating hemisphere. The tornado engulfed the hemisphere, and dull clangs rang out as if countless blades were striking rotating steel and were being deflected. In the competitor stands, Neji gripped the railing, his expression taut. Frustration crept up on him. Both techniques were rotation, but Hinata's shield was far larger and denser than the one he could make. Is that the clan's secret rotation? Hanabi whispered in awe. One-chan is amazing. Hiyashi, watching his daughters, encouraged Hanabi. Your gentle fist talent is no less than Hinata's. With hard work, you'll reach that level too. He felt a strange satisfaction and surprise. How had both his daughters become so gifted? Hinata had only begun changing a few years ago. She wasn't always this outstanding. Was love really that powerful? Or had their clan's teaching been wrong and Izanami's methods right? He didn't know that Izanami had become a kind of potent tonic, one that only worked on the Hyuga. Whoosh. The blue rotating hemisphere didn't last long. As the wind dispersed, the energy collapsed into a blue shimmer. Hinata, who had spun without feeling dizzy, vanished into an afterimage and reappeared in front of a shocked Temari, fingers thrusting again. Temari hadn't expected her ultimate technique to be so easily countered. She had no time to shunshin away and could only raise her giant fan to block. Hinata shifted, switching from fingers to an open palm and struck the fan. Boom! The shockwave punched through the 3-star fan and slammed into Temari. Her feet left the ground and she was blasted back. Pain roared inside her. A taste of blood touched her lips. She fought to steady herself and planned to use that blood to unleash her strongest move. She forgot she was airborne. Thank you for the guidance. When Temari looked up, Hinata had vanished. A gentle voice came from behind her. Roar. For a moment, Temari imagined the sound of a king of beasts. Then a palm hit her back. Chakra in her meridians vanished as if a gentle fist strike had sealed every chakra point. The wind left her knees. She dropped down, dazed and on the verge of fainting. Only when a kunai was pressed to her neck, the cold steel pressed to her throat, did a little chakra creep back into her system, restoring some consciousness. The battle is over. The winner, Hyuga Hinata. When Shiranui announced it, Temari first felt sharp unwillingness, then glanced at the kunai as it was withdrawn. A wry smile crossed her face. I lost. Temari was proud by nature, and with good reason. The prouder someone is, the harder the fall can cut when they're defeated, especially by a peer. Some would train harder, others might fall into despair. Temari, the proud princess, would choose the former. Hinata did not comfort the losing sand ninja. She stored her kunai in the sealing scroll on her wrist and walked toward the competitor's passage. As she neared the stands, cheers swelled and she looked up for her father and sister. Hanabi waved excitedly, ignoring her image. Hiyashi didn't scold her, and even showed the faintest smile on his usually stern face. Hinata's lips twitched into a small smile, and warmth spread through her chest. She quickened her steps to share the joy with Izanami, but just before reaching the stands, she heard the crowd suddenly shouting insults. She frowned. Why the sudden change? Had she failed to bow? Or were they berating the sand ninja? When Hinata reached Izanami, she understood. Kankuro, who had drawn number 6, had forfeited. Nara Shikamaru, like Uzumaki Naruto, advanced without a fight. But unlike Naruto's automatic advancement, the crowd didn't realize the previous match had been the second round. They just watched a spectacular battle, only for the next bout to be decided by forfeit. It felt like being offered a delicious dish and finding something revolting mixed in. The audience, many of whom had traveled far and paid good money, were disgusted. Kankuro, who was conserving his strength for the team's plan, didn't care. He even sneered. Shiranui Genma ignored the crowd and announced, "Examinee number 6 forfeits. Examinee number 5 advances automatically. Examinees 7 and 8, please enter the arena." As he finished, sand blossomed to Shiranui's left and condensed into a person. The audience, who had been cursing and hadn't even heard the announcement, fell silent at the sight of that entrance. A sand-made appearance like that wasn't ordinary. When did he even get here? Nara Shikamaru and Uzumaki Naruto both blinked, glancing toward Gaara's spot and finding it empty. "Humph, making a fuss over nothing," Kankuro snorted. "With Gaara's strength, you might not even know how you died." "You painted-faced cat," Naruto pointed at Kankuro. "You wouldn't even fight Shikamaru. How strong is your teammate, really?" One jab offended two people, but Shikamaru didn't take it personally. He leaned toward Izanami and said quietly, "That guy with the gourd isn't ordinary. Be careful, Izanami." Hinata, watching Izanami, who didn't have a camera in his hand, guessed something and smiled softly. "Good luck, Izanami-kun." Izanami didn't smile back, he only nodded. Then, to the stunned stares of Uchiha Sasuke, Shikamaru, the rookies, and even Kankuro and Temari, who had returned to the stands, Izanami's feet left the ground. He floated slowly upward and began flying toward the arena. The entire audience and the examinees fell into a hush at that sight. Chapter 78, Shocking the Whole Audience, The Mystery of the Fusion of Three Natures. He's flying. That boy can actually fly. Can a ninja even use ninjutsu to fly? This is amazing. Those two young men look dangerous. This match is going to be more intense than the others. Everyone in the stadium stared in stunned silence for a few seconds as Izanami floated there with no visible wind barrier, apparently defying gravity with some unknown ability. Then the stands erupted. Gasps, excited chatter, and shouts filled the air. The ordinary spectators were awestruck, but the ninja present were shocked in a different way. A flying ninja? Did he learn Iwagakure's Earth Release, lightweight rock technique? Is it ninjutsu, a secret technique, or a Kekkei Genkai? So he's the new generation's number one, someone who mastered 5 nature transformations. If I remember correctly, he even independently developed the 4th Hokage's Rasengan and combined 2 natures to create that storm release secret technique. Could this flying jutsu be his invention too? What an astonishing talent! Even elite jonin like Kakashi Hatake and Might Guy watched in disbelief. So amazing. Oni-chan can really fly, Hanabi murmured, stunned. Hiyashi Hyuga's eyes trembled as he looked toward the contestants' stands. Veins throbbed at his temples. Only when he saw the other examinees' shocked faces and the small smile on his eldest daughter's lips did he finally close his Byakugan, though his heart still wouldn't calm. It was obvious Izanami and Hinata had long ago detected they were being watched. Otherwise, the intelligence gap couldn't be this wide. 5 nature transformations, the Rasengan, the storm release secret skill, and now a flying ninjutsu. Neither the guards nor he had known. Those 2 kids were masters at hiding. Konoha really is the cradle of geniuses, someone said. I didn't expect to see a flying ninja. It's rare even in the ninja world. In the VIP section, Orochimaru's face showed surprise. Hiruzen Sarutobi quietly drew on his pipe, his eyes bright with approval. Truly outstanding. First Hokage, Tobirama, your decision was right. Integrating the Senju into Konoha has filled the village's future with hope. An Uchiha orphan, the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki, and a ninjutsu genius with an unknown bloodline. Konoha will rise again in this generation. All eyes were on Izanami as he slowly descended to the right of Shiranui Genma. The announcer studied him, then raised his arm and shouted, "Second round, Izanami versus Gaara, officially begin." After his signal, Shiranui immediately used body flicker to leap back and create distance. Even civilians could tell from their entrances that this match would be fierce. Genma, a special jonin who had once guarded the 4th Hokage, certainly could. Both Izanami and the dark-eyed boy carrying a gourd radiated terrifying auras and massive chakra. Gaara stood with his arms folded, expressionless, seemingly unfazed by his opponent's ability to fly. It wasn't that his mental fortitude was unshakable. He was encased in sand armor, and that outward face was a mask. Beneath it, his true expression was ferocious and bloodthirsty. As if responding to its master's will, the gourd on his back opened its stopper. Sand slipped free and rose of its own accord to surround him, waiting for orders. Gaara was the first to move. But he didn't send the sand immediately from his body. Instead, the ground to Izanami's left and right surged upward, forming two waves that lunged at the floating figure like hands trying to grab him. "Sand coffin," Gaara intoned. The two waves merged and twisted into a knot. Since becoming a killing machine, countless foes had died beneath Gaara's sand coffin and sand burial, but this time there was no blood staining the grains. Izanami, who had vanished in a flash of body flicker, reappeared in the sky in white robes and looked down at Gaara. Quietly, almost to himself, he said, "In my current state, I can't be bothered by your little ninja games of make-believe." He raised his hands and condensed a giant blue and white sphere of energy. The white at its core quickly deepened to a darker blue. Without announcing any technique, he hurled the sphere downward. "Sky Sand Shield!" Seeing the descending energy sphere and the water release chakra it carried, Gaara didn't hesitate. He crouched, slammed his palm to the ground, and poured enormous chakra into transforming the earth into sand. The sand rose and coalesced into a huge shield that met the sphere. With a thunderous impact, the sphere failed to pierce the barrier. Instead, it sank a third of the way in and then detonated into a massive water vortex. The vortex drilled through the sand shield like a drill bit, spewing torrents of water that soaked and weighed the sand. Izanami hadn't expected the technique to instantly end the fight either. Almost immediately after throwing the first sphere, he formed another, smaller this time, roughly the size of a basketball. Two marble-sized orbs appeared inside that sphere, colors shifting from white and blue to one white and one blue. Jonin, who had seen the preliminaries, recognized this as the S-rank storm release secret skill that had been circulating through Konoha's circles. Everyone braced, expecting him to unleash the technique called Judgment. But as all watched, another orb manifested inside the storm spheres, a blue and white sphere that, within seconds, flared orange-red. Even those unfamiliar with nature transformation saw the fire element. The three colored orbs, white like lightning, sea blue, and fire red, spun around each other inside the sphere like tomoe in a sharingan. Some of the audience made hand signals. Yakushi Kabuto, disguised as a Konoha Anbu and hiding at the very back, tensed, ready to form seals. The three colored cores rotated clockwise, then one blue core suddenly reversed to counterclockwise and collided with the white core, the red following close behind. The impact shattered their separate forms. The three liquids burst out, mingled, and coalesced into a new hue, a cyan shot through with flame light. Secret skill. Resonance Light Cannon. Izanami named it and hurled it downward. At that moment, the water vortex had just dissipated, leaving a gash in the floating sand shield, and like a homing missile, the cyan sphere fell toward that dent. It accelerated along the way, swelling from basketball-sized into a cylindrical cyan pillar of light as it fell. Judgment had been a diffusive electrical onslaught like a waterfall. This cyan pillar burned with orange-red flame along its surface and core. Anyone with a sensing ability could feel the destructive force packed inside. "What is this? People are going to die!" Shiranui Genma cried, and body flickered toward the high wall outside the sand shield. Gaara felt the aura of death like a whisper at his ear. Without hesitation, he formed hand seals and murmured, "Feigning sleep technique." His eyes closed, his consciousness slipped into deep sleep. His body and gourd flowed into sand, and the ground itself, including the shield overhead, became a rolling desert that swallowed him. Boom! The cyan pillar struck inside the sand waves. A sky-shaking explosion ripped through Konoha's central plaza. The earth trembled. The plaza shuddered violently. Nearby spectators clapped hands over their ears, wincing at the blast that seemed to steal their hearing. Those farther away were knocked off their feet by the shockwave. Villagers paused whatever they were doing and turned toward the plaza, seeing a giant mushroom cloud rising. Before anyone had a chance to respond, dense afterimages streaked out from different parts of the village and began attacking the patrolling ninja. From somewhere unknown, a shout echoed, "Summoning technique!" An enormous veil of white mist surged in, and from it a three-headed snake materialized, rampaging from the village entrance inward. In the plaza, before people had fully recovered their hearing, white feathers drifted down through the smoke, and an irresistible drowsiness swept over many of the onlookers. Heads nodded, people slumped forward, asleep on the spot. The Konoha Crush plan had officially begun. Just moments before, Konoha had been peaceful and bustling. Then war descended out of nowhere, throwing Central Street into chaos. Villagers and shinobi were completely unprepared for the sudden attack from the Sand and Sound ninja who had infiltrated the village. While fighting back, Konoha quickly diverted its people to shelters following the safety manual, but manpower was thin. The defenders were overwhelmed, and the attackers began to think the Leaf's shinobi were nothing special. The Anbu and the major clan forces were sent out. Most of the Anbu moved toward the square to protect the third Hokage. Clan members and villagers were shepherded toward the shelter at Hokage Rock. As a result, the Hokage building and the clan districts were left poorly defended and poorly sensed. Bang! In a forest outside the village, a sound like a popping balloon split the air. A gust of wind scattered a vast cloud of white smoke. Then 301 puppets in black cloaks, embroidered with red clouds, appeared as if from nowhere. Most of their faces were wrapped in white bandages, only their foreheads and eyes visible, so it was impossible to tell which were merely crafted puppets and which were puppets made from corpses that had retained their abilities. In front of them stood a figure in the same cloak. If an Akatsuki member had been there, they would have called him leader. It was Tendo Pain's image, but not the real Pain. It was Izanami using the transformation jutsu to take Pain's form. Izanami's gold-level chakra control made that transformation nearly flawless. Beyond fusing multiple nature transformations through his Super Hurricane serial spheres, his control made it extremely difficult even for sensing shinobi to see through the disguise unless they recognized Izanami's chakra firsthand. After withdrawing the puppets from a large scroll, Izanami formed 3 shadow clones infused with large reserves of chakra. The figure that had been standing there, the one transformed into Tendo Pain, was the real main body. The Izanami seen later in the square was merely a clone. The 3 shadow clones split their tasks immediately. The first made a hand seal, used transformation jutsu to take Pain's appearance, then vanished to operate alone. The second transformed into the guise of an ordinary man wearing sunglasses and slipped off toward the Nanga River cave. The third stayed behind to guard and supply chakra to the smallest puppet, different from the rest. At the same time, the reincarnation eye remotely activated the chakra cores of the 300 puppets. They sprang to life and scattered like after-images across the landscape. Only the short, bandaged puppet that had been kept back remained where it stood, the 301st puppet. Its eyes were not the dull ones of the others. They were crystal clear, gem-like, and shimmered with a red glow. That puppet was Ranmaru, now mechanical. The third shadow clone's job was to protect Ranmaru and channel chakra into his core. Ranmaru's eyes pulsed red. Around the scattered puppets, red powder formed as if from thin air. Their forms shimmered and momentarily distorted like mirages before disappearing. Even the Byakugan's X-ray sight couldn't lock onto them. This was the work of the red eyes technique, the natural counter to the Byakugan, which uses chakra to project images and interfere with opponents' sensing. With the red eyes obscuring them, 200 of the puppets moved as if using a transparent escape jutsu and arrived silently in Central Street to watch the fighting from the shadows. The battle had already left many casualties. Bodies and badly wounded men lined the streets, rooftops, alleys, and hidden corners. Some survivors hid so well they seemed part of the scenery, but the reincarnation eye's long-range sight and X-ray vision left them nowhere to hide. A portion of the puppets revealed themselves. Red powder vanished, their figures manifested, and they searched among the dead, picking up corpses and vanishing again. Shinobi who caught sight of it thought they were hallucinating or trapped in genjutsu, but they could not afford the curiosity. The battle forced them to focus. The puppets took every corpse, Konoha, Sand, or Sound, without discrimination. The mortally wounded were finished off, unless they belonged to Konoha. In those cases, the puppets sometimes merely incapacitated them to create the appearance of an attempted killing, giving nearby Konoha shinobi a chance to intervene. Splurch. Sharp blades built into the puppets shot out, piercing throats, stabbing chests, and twisting or beheading, though they always avoided damaging the heart. To create a puppet that could house a chakra core, The heart had to be kept intact. None. None. Still none. A shadow clone standing beside Renmaru watched the scene and kept muttering those emotionless words. Clearly whatever outcome he'd hoped to see had not appeared. He didn't falter, though. He raised a hand, made a small gesture, and whispered, "Activate Plan B." At the cue, the clone controlling the puppets from the Nanga River cave switched tactics. A different set of puppets moved in, those constructed from corpses that retained the abilities they had in life. These corpse puppets were far stronger than they had been alive, because their chakra came from Izanami and they were controlled directly by his shadow clone. They lacked the yin-yang release black receivers that would allow the reincarnation eye's full functions, so they couldn't use every one of its abilities, but Izanami could still channel ninjutsu through them. The corpse puppets divided tasks. Some finished off wounded enemies, others forced hiding shinobi to expose themselves and then intervened in the battle. In a flash, a puppet materialized behind a sound ninja assisting the sand forces. A sharp, lightning-coated blade concealed in its arm shot out and pierced the man's back, twisting hard. So fast, the sound ninja breathed, unaware of the fourth faction in the fight. He had just enough time to whisper that line before dying. "Who is it?" "Ambu." "No, Ambu don't wear that uniform. Who is this?" "Watch out, his body flicker is fast, and his concealment is strong." Nearby Konoha, Sand, and Sound Shinobi all tensed on seeing the unexpectedly appearing puppet. After killing the Sound Ninja with a single strike, the puppet raised its hand, revealing a hole in its palm, then condensed a brilliant golden light and fired a beam at a Sand Ninja. "It's one of us. Stand down," a Konoha Shinobi cried, fooled by the puppet's Akatsuki cloak. "Wind release?" A Shimura clan shinobi, forming hand seals ready to strike the Sand Ninja, was deceived, but the puppet darted in front of him and impaled him with a single thrust. Blood flowed, staining the clan emblem red. After that, the puppet froze. Swish! A cold flash and a short blade severed the puppet's head from its body. A special jonin who used Konoha Kenjutsu had killed it and looked at the headless body with disgust. Hidden Sand Village's puppets, why are they killing their own people? Losing a puppet mattered little to Izanami's shadow clone. In fact, Izanami and his clones smiled. From their viewpoint, when that puppet killed the Shimura shinobi, a green beam of light had flown out from the corpse and headed straight for Izanami's main body. A green entry, when decomposed, only yielded random double-digit points, not even a fraction of a purple entry. But Izanami was delighted. With his current power, drops, whether low or high, were extremely rare. How rare? Even elite jonin like Zabuza and Kurosuke Raiga, or bloodline users like Bai and the original Renmaru, might not drop a low-level entry with bad luck. Since graduating, Izanami had only gotten 2 blue entries from Rock Lee, and it had been ages since he'd seen entries drop from Uchiha Sasuke or the Hyuga sisters. Now a puppet killing an enemy had produced a green entry for him. That proved 2 things. Puppets could generate entries when they defeated opponents, and Izanami's suspicion was right. The talent entry system concealed mechanisms that could increase drop rates. If he could find and exploit those mechanisms, the system's odds could be shifted. To test whether this had been an extraordinary fluke, the Shadow Clone ordered the puppets on the street to launch indiscriminate attacks on every shinobi nearby. They slaughtered Sand and Sound forces mercilessly. Konoha shinobi were either knocked unconscious or given the illusion that a puppet had tried to kill them but hadn't, so villager rescue or intervention could happen, another way of manufacturing meritorious service. After several killings, a blue beam of light flew from a Sand shinobi's body toward Izanami's main position. The mechanism was real. Izanami, still in pain's guise, couldn't help grinning. Before Jiraiya or anyone else in the village could notice that these puppets wore Akatsuki cloaks, the Shadow Clone in the Nanga River cave had already ordered the strongest puppets in Central Street to use the red eyes for concealment and withdraw. They all sped back toward Izanami's main body's location. Route. Chapter 80. I was afraid of being targeted by Danzo, so I killed him first. Few people knew that deep beneath Konoha, there were 2 enormous hidden underground bases. One lay under the Hokage building, the other sat near the Hokage rock, buried beneath mountain and forest. Each base had many entrances, allowing personnel to move through tunnels and appear quickly anywhere in the village. Those entrances, however, were sealed and masked by nature itself. Only Root and the Anbu could find them or break the seals. If someone else stumbled onto an entrance, nearby surveillance would detect them, and the Anbu would come to chase them off. In extreme cases, the intruder could be branded with a seal or have their memories read. The bases were protected by barriers that blocked Byakugan and sensing techniques. They were the most hidden places in Konoha. None of those protections mattered to Izanami. He appeared out of nowhere a few meters from a mountain wall, glanced at a protruding rock, then used gravity release to lift a handful of pebbles and repulsion to fire them like armor-piercing rounds. The stones became afterimages and shattered the rock and the surveillance device hidden within it in an instant. On the surveillance backend, a screen immediately went white. Root agents noticed and rushed to report to Danzo Shimura. Danzo-sama, surveillance at entrance A3 has been destroyed. We suspect an intruder has entered the base. Danzo, seated on a stone chair, slowly opened the only unwrapped eye and said coolly, "Is it someone from the Anbu?" "We're not sure. The intruder hasn't revealed himself, and the method doesn't match typical Anbu techniques," a Root operative replied. "Send Fu or Toruni to handle it." If it is Anbu, Danzo had been ready to use the opportunity to weaken the Anbu, as he had before, but then he changed his mind. "Spare him and imprison him. He may become useful to me." He did not take the intruder lightly, but he also felt Konoha itself was in chaos. The village's sensing barrier covered its entrances, and, except for a handful of top officials, no one knew the rotation schedule of the sensing teams. Orochimaru had already begun his battle with Hiruzen Sarutobi. Even with Izanagi as a trump card, Danzo didn't consider Orochimaru a direct threat. Anyone brazen enough to sneak into the Root base at a time like this must be a coward trying to steal secrets during the confusion. Then another voice burst into his mind. "Danzo-sama, the intruder has been identified. It's someone from the Akatsuki." Fuyamanaka's voice exploded into Danzo's head. Danzo's face went pale. "Someone from Akatsuki? Here? Now of all times? That damned Orochimaru." His first suspicion fell not on Uchiha Itachi, an Akatsuki spy who could be counted on to act in Konoha's interests if Sasuke stayed in the village, but on Orochimaru, who had once been associated with Akatsuki. Still, he asked anyway, "Is it Uchiha Itachi?" "No," Fu replied. "The intruder's yin chakra has no Sharingan aura. He's a man in Akatsuki garb with purple ripple eyes and short orange hair." Danzo's breathing grew shallow. "Purple ripple eyes? Are you sure?" Fu paused a few seconds, as if sensing Danzo's agitation, then said, "I am certain he has a pair of purple ripple eyes. Such powerful ocular power. He already discovered me and destroyed the monitor." "Gather every squad. Move with me. Surround and annihilate him," Danzo barked, leaping to his feet, fanaticism lighting his face. "Rinnegan, that brat from before had delivered himself directly to me. I won't be polite." Under Fuyamanaka's alert, the man who could perform mind-body transmission and whose own base had barriers and surveillance, Root operatives who weren't already out on other duties turned into streaks of black and shot toward Izanami. Izanami watched it all and chuckled. "Perfect. That lets me trap them all at once." Several figures then appeared behind him, a puppet version of Kurosuke Reiga and his Black Ho family. Izanami raised a hand and gave a signal. A shadow clone in the Nanga River cave immediately took control of the puppets and sent them charging. Rimaru, who had made 300 puppets invisible, turned his head toward Root, his eyes glowing red. Izanami's main body advanced toward Danzo's position. The underground base was vast, filled with ancient buildings from the Warring States era. Light was dim. It was perfect for ambushes. Izanami reached a bridge when 4 overlapping shouts erupted from all directions. Ninjutsu, 4 violet flame formation. 4 walls of translucent purple rose from the sides of the bridge, above and below. Figures dropped from the heights of the ancient structures, burst through the ceiling with earth release, and converged, forming seals as they shouted in unison. Fire release, fire dragon flame bullet. Water release, water wall formation. Wind release, vacuum great sphere. Earth release, swamp of the underworld. Lightning release, thunderclap. Compound ninjutsu, lightning water dragon bullet. High-level 5-element techniques and complex compound jutsu, extremely difficult and immensely powerful, poured down at Izanami as the 4-violet flame formation closed. The ground beneath his feet became a swamp, trying to pin him in place. Root attacked with everything they had. In a fight of information and preparation, overwhelming firepower was the safest answer to an unknown enemy. Even most Kaj would struggle under such coordinated assault. Izanami was not ordinary, though. He was a Kaji-level expert who wielded rule-like powers, like Uchiha Obito's mastery of Kamui. He rose into the air, shrugged off the swamp of the underworld, spread his hands, and said softly, "Shinra Tensei." Chakra condensed into repulsive force, forming a transparent green barrier around him. The barrier shattered outward as an invisible storm of repulsion that felt like a giant's palm swatting bubbles. The incoming jutsu were blown apart, reduced to colored auras and energy that dissipated slowly. The repulsive storm then slammed into the 4-violet flame formation, forcing the purple walls to bulge like inflated balloons. They held, then contracted back. The remaining pressure couldn't break the formation, which was designed to trap Kaji-level opponents. Mind-body switch technique, someone shouted from the shadows. While Izanami hovered and released repulsion, invisible yin energy penetrated the formation and seeped into his body.